Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. American Comics. Man in Marvel, host of Venom. Chapter 61. Chen Linan and Venom continued to walk forward along the passage. After some time, they saw that there seemed to be a light ahead. How can there be light there? This is a sewer, Chen Linan said vigilantly. It seems that we have finally gained something. While communicating with the Venom with his consciousness, he moved towards it silently. Soon he came to the brightly lit place in front of him. It turned out that it was a natural cave, about 100 square meters in size, and it was filled with instruments and equipment. There are several light bulbs hanging from the ceiling of the cave, which are the only light sources in the entire underground passage. This looks like a laboratory. Could it be that all the missing people were used by him for experiments? Chen Linan thought uneasily as he looked at the layout inside. But if those people were used by him for experiments, why didn't he see any of them here? The more carefully he observed the equipment inside, the deeper the doubts in Chen Linan's heart. This place is obviously a place for experiments, which shows that the so-called lizard man should be a madman of science. But if this is the case, it cannot explain what the huge monster those people saw was. Just after Chen Linan was puzzled, a dangerous premonition suddenly came to his mind, and the Venom warning sounded crazily. Chen Linan immediately dodged aside. As he dodged, a huge stone hit the place where he was standing, smashing the table in front of him to pieces. After dodging, Chen Linan looked towards the place where the stone hit, and saw a pair of bright red eyes staring at him in the darkness not far away. Judging from the height of the eyes and the vague outline around them, the attacker did have an extremely tall figure. While he was observing the other party did not stop moving, only to see huge stones constantly hitting him. While moving and dodging, Chen Linan cursed secretly in his heart, "MD, it's really a monster." Sure enough, Venom guessed right. It turned out that the lizard man was really a lizard man. What is the situation? Has the situation in New York deteriorated to this point? As he and the monster got closer and closer, he had already seen the other side's appearance. This monster is like a huge lizard, but it stands upright, with a large windbreaker covering its green scales. His bright red eyes contain not only the madness of a beast, but also the wisdom of a human being. There are not many boulders in the underground space, and soon there is nothing to throw away. Chen Linan took this opportunity and quickly stepped forward. The sharp claws on his hands were already hungry, and he couldn't wait to draw a few bright red pictures on this huge lizard. He quickly approached the lizard man, jumped hard when the opponent's claws were waving towards him, and jumped to the top of the sewer. Then he stepped hard and was behind the lizard man in an instant. PFF'd. Chen Linan's sharp claws pierced directly from the lizard man's back, and the blocking sensation from his fingertips fully demonstrated how hard the monster's scales were and how well developed its muscles were. Roar! The pain from the back stimulated the lizard man even more, and he roared angrily, his red eyes full of uncontrollable wildness and cold-killing intent. He swung his body and threw away Chen Linan, who was clinging to his back. Chen Linan nimbly landed on one side of the wall, and then shot piles of spider silk at the lizard man. Although the spider silk was like a piece of cloth that could be torn apart in front of the lizard man, Chen Linan couldn't bear it and continued to shoot, so even though he kept tearing, he was still entangled into a big black cocoon. Taking advantage of the brief moment when he was under control, Chen Linan folded his fingers together, using his hand as a sharp short spear, and then used the reaction force of the wall to charge directly at the lizard man, preparing to penetrate his heart with one blow and solve this problem. Monster! Chen Linan pierced the spider silk with his hand, and then continued to tear it inside. He felt that his hand had indeed stabbed the lizard man's body, but was blocked by hard bones. A huge force grabbed his wrist and fixed his hand firmly, unable to break free. Stab! The spider silk wrapped around the lizard man was torn into pieces by him from inside, and one of his hands was holding on to Chen Linan's wrist. Chen Linan's fingertips had already penetrated his chest. If it weren't for the sternum resisting and his wrist being firmly grasped, the lizard man's heart would have been pierced at this moment. Roar! The lizard man roared angrily, grabbing Chen Linan's wrist harder. Chen Linan's other hand was palmed like a knife, and he directly chopped off the hand that was holding him like a lizard man, but he was also caught and couldn't move. Just as Chen Linan was about to attack again with his tentacles, a thick and powerful tail swept directly from the side. The tail hit his waist, knocking him out fiercely. hitting a side wall, and falling into the dirty water below. Gone. Forgot that he is a lizard man and he still has a tail that he can move. Chen Linan jumped out of the water while cursing in a low voice. The venom on his wrist was constantly surging to repair it. The lizard man's attack just now had the bones of his wrist broken. The lizard man also knew the damage he caused, so when Chen Linan came out of the water, he roared and rushed over, ready to take this opportunity to finish Chen Linan in one fell swoop. Just now he was stabbed in the back very painfully, and now he was waving his claws to repay the damage. Chen Linan's hands were still drooping weakly. Seeing the lizard man rushing towards him quickly, he also took a few steps back in fear. Such a sight made the lizard man's eyes even redder. His wildness was roaring wildly, trying to tear the prey in front of him to shreds. Just when his claws were about to fall on Chen Linan, several tentacles suddenly sprang out from Chen Linan's back, wrapping tightly around his hands, limbs, and even his tail. At the same time, his two arms that seemed to have been crushed and limp were thrust out quickly. The sharp claws directly pierced the lizard man's shoulder. Chen Linan let out a low cry, and tore it with both hands. Coupled with the tentacles wrapped around the lizard man's wrist, the lizard man's arm was torn off directly. Roar! The lizard man's screams filled the entire underground space, and the severe pain made him run around like a headless chicken. Some walls and stone pillars were full of cracks under his savage impact. Chen Linan wrapped the lizard man's severed arm with spider silk and put it aside, then continued to charge forward. Chen Linan planned to take advantage of the lizard man's serious injury to kill the monster in one fell swoop and eliminate the trouble. But after he saw the current situation of the lizard man clearly, a storm surged in his heart. Obviously, he just tore off the lizard man's arm just now, but at this moment, a section of the lizard man's shoulder has grown. What kind of recovery speed is this? Even if lizards can regenerate limbs, they can't do it so fast. Chen Linan felt that his original knowledge and life experience had been severely impacted. Looking at Chen Linan who was charging towards him again, a little fear and panic appeared in the lizard man's eyes. His left arm maintained the status quo at this time and did not continue to grow, but the right arm began to grow at an accelerated rate, and soon it had the shape of an arm. Although his right arm looks very small, the basic grasping function can already be realized. Seeing the lizard man's right arm suddenly regenerating at an accelerated rate, Chen Linan also felt something bad in his heart. At the same time, the lizard man reached into his coat pocket with his barely graspable right hand, and took out a small glass jar. There is a dark green liquid flowing in the glass jar, and it looks extraordinarily beautiful and translucent in this dark underground space. Boom! The lizard man threw the glass jar between him and Chen Linan without the slightest hesitation. The dark green liquid in the glass jar flowed out from the broken jar and came into contact with the air. In an instant, the green mist rose and slowly dissipated outward. Seeing this, Chen Linan stopped in time to prevent himself from crashing into this unknown cloud of green mist. He paused to adjust his breathing, and then quickly passed through the mist after holding his breath. Although his reaction was already very fast, the lizard man still took advantage of this little time to run away and disappear. Chen Linan looked around and found no sign of the lizard man. It seemed that the other party had already penetrated the entire underground space very thoroughly. He was running so fast and secretly that he couldn't even detect the venom of the other party. This lizard man is really interesting. Is he an animal or a human? I feel a strong wildness in him, but it is also mixed with human wisdom. After seeing a lizard man up close, Venom's curiosity became even more intense. At this time, the green thick fog slowly dissipated in the air. It seemed that they did not last particularly long. Chen Linan took the lizard man's severed limb over and replied to Venom, I am as curious as you are about how this monster became like this. He should have been a normal human before. Look at his movements, behavior, and the clothes he was wearing. The smashed laboratory should also belong to him. It's hard to imagine this lizard man doing experiments with a test tube. After talking about the laboratory, Chen Linan and Venom went back there to collect clues. Although the place had been smashed by stones and many appliances and equipment had been broken, there were still some paper experimental records and report exists. Studies on the combination of lizard genes in mice. Experiment report. Number 153 failed. Experiment report. Succeeded. Research on the combination of lizard genes and humans. A few test data and reports have explained what kind of existence the lizard man is and why it came into being. Although the results of the joint research between lizard men and humans were not written on the paper, Chen Linan also knew that the other party had failed, otherwise the monster just now would not have been born. Looking at these things, Venom couldn't help but be speechless. Human beings are really terrible. Such monster-like things will experiment as long as they want. Who says it's not? Chen Linan also shook his head and said. As he was talking, he suddenly shot a line of spider silk in one direction. Call out. The figure that just appeared over there quickly rolled to the side and avoided the spider thread. Hey, don't get excited, it's me, Spider-Man. Peter stood up and said to Chen Linan. He also saw a bright light here just now, so he quietly touched it to see what was going on, but he didn't expect to be discovered by Chen Linan as soon as he showed his head. Why are you here? Seeing that it was Peter, Chen Linan put down his hands and asked curiously. After hearing this, Peter also took out a photo and said, isn't there a rumor about a lizard man in New York City recently? I'm just here to find clues. This photo was taken on the way I just came here. It is a huge footprint. It seems that the rumor may be true. There is really a big lizard in this underground space. Chen Linan also took the photo and looked at it. A huge footprint was clearly visible on the photo. Peter next to him also explained to him, I have been observing this footprint for a long time and found some clues. His heels are obviously deeper than the front. This shows that this big lizard is very heavy, or that it walks upright. It's a bit weird. Chen Linan also nodded after listening and said, you're right. There is indeed a lizard man underneath, and he does walk on two legs. This footprint is also his. The two of us had just fought before you came, but it was a pity that he escaped. Hearing Chen Linan's words, Peter also froze for a moment. He was still confirming whether the lizard man was real, but he didn't expect Venom to have already fought with him. I just lost some time on the road because of this footprint. Otherwise, if I had come earlier, I should have caught him. Peter shook his head regretfully and said. After he finished speaking, he looked at the dilapidated laboratory again, and then asked Chen Linan, so what is this place? It looks like a laboratory. Upon hearing this, Chen Linan also handed him the report in his hand and said, this is a laboratory, the laboratory of the lizard man, where he conducts experiments on the combination of lizard genes and other organisms. What? Hearing Chen Linan's words and seeing the reports in his hand, Peter was shocked and puzzled. Isn't this the research Dr. Connors was doing when I helped him? Peter's head was full of question marks now. He didn't know why Dr. Connors' research data appeared in this lizard man's laboratory. Could it be that this lizard man stole Dr. Connors' experimental data? Peter's mind was filled with thoughts, and he decided to go to the school to find Dr. Connors later to find out what was going on. While Peter was silent with his thoughts, Chen Linan was also observing the laboratory. When he saw the laboratory and experimental data, he couldn't help but think of Dr. Connors, because he was an expert in new genetics and reptiles. However, unlike Peter, he did not know that Dr. Connors had conducted research in this area. He just wanted to ask Dr. Connors his views on lizardmen. After all, the other party is an expert in this area, maybe there will be some ideas for dealing with lizardmen. After searching the underground space, the two of them left here with their own concerns. Although Chen Linan already knew Peter's identity, Peter didn't know about it, and their identities were kept secret from each other. Therefore, the two of them cannot share the clue about Dr. Connors, and they also have their own ideas about further investigation of the lizard people. When Chen Linan climbed out of the underground passage and came outside, the sun was about to sink into the horizon. He stayed in the sewer for a long time today, but fortunately, he had some gains. Phew, I finally came out. I feel a sewer smell emanating from my body. I don't know how long it will take to dissipate. Chen Linan took a deep breath of the fresh air outside while talking. Because there were many people on the street, the venom communicated with him in his consciousness. This is just the smell in your nose. I am a symbiont. How could I smell like a sewer? Looking at the darkened sky, Chen Linan also touched his stomach and said, go eat something first, and then go to school to see if Dr. Connors is there. I remember that there are evening classes this semester. Maybe he just happens to be in the laboratory. I might be busy here. I want a big steak and a cup of hot cocoa. Venom followed, having already thought about what he wanted to eat. No problem. Chen Linan looked at the surrounding restaurants while talking, and he remembered that there was a pretty good restaurant here. At the same time, on the other side, Peter Parker was squatting on the roof of the building eating a hot dog. As he ate, he looked at the photos in his hand. The more he looked, the more he thought he might go to Dr. Connors. This lizard man was both a reptile and involved in new genetics. Dr. Connors should be able to give him a lot of inspiration. Peter ate the hot dog in his hand in twos and twos, then packed the photos and rushed towards the building of the Daily Bugle. This huge footprint should be able to cope with the front page of James tomorrow. Although it is not a frontal photo of the lizard man, it can also reflect sufficient suspense. 1,000 yuan is already a huge sum of money for him. He can buy a motorcycle or a second-hand car. Thinking of this, he is even more energetic. After he gets this bonus, he must give it to Aunt May. Surprise. Soon he arrived at the building of the Daily Bugle and gave the photo to James. As expected, although James still felt disgusted, thinking that he hadn't taken a photo of the lizard man, he still regarded this huge footprint as a tomorrow's front page will be posted. After handing in the photos, he came to the school with spider webs, and there were not many people in the school at this time. There are some people walking around in twos and threes next to the teaching building. They should all come for night classes at night. Just as Peter was walking towards the laboratory, a crisp female voice sounded from behind. Hey! Peter, wait for me. Peter turned around when he heard the sound and saw Deborah Whitman wearing big framed glasses running toward him holding several books. Haha, I didn't expect to meet you at night. I remember you don't have night classes. Deborah Whitman asked curiously as she followed him towards the laboratory. Peter touched his head and said, I really don't take evening classes. I came to ask Dr. Connors some things today, but I don't know if he is here now. Hearing Peter's words, Deborah Whitman also pushed her eyes and smiled. This is the right person to ask. I have been taking night classes for a while. According to Dr. Connors's previous habit, look, he should be doing experiments in the laboratory today. Hearing Deborah Whitman's words, Peter immediately felt relieved. Just now he was worried that the doctor would not be in the laboratory. They entered the teaching building while talking, and walked towards the third floor where the laboratory was located. When they had just climbed up to the third floor, they saw Chen Linan standing at the top of the stairs and preparing to walk in. Seeing that Chen Linan was also here, Deborah Whitman waved to him and smiled. Hey! Leon, what a coincidence, are you also here for the evening class? It's a surprise today. I ran into you two one after another. I remember that you don't take evening classes very much, do you? Seeing these two people appear here, Chen Linan was also a little surprised, but after thinking about it, Peter should be here for the same reason as him. It seems that Peter also thought of coming to Dr. Connors to ask about the situation. It's really unexpected. I didn't expect to meet the two of you. You are also here for evening classes. Chen Linan laughed. Hearing Chen Linan's question, Deborah Whitman nodded, while Peter Parker shook his head and said, I'm here to see the doctor, and I want to ask him something. Chen Linan nodded in a sudden realization, and said, oh, so that's the case, then let's go together. Dr. Connors' office is at the far left of the corridor. Speaking of which, the three of them walked towards Dr. Connors' office together. The closer they got to Dr. Connors' office, the stronger the bad premonition became, which made both Peter and Chen Linan frown. Of course, Deborah Whitman didn't feel anything. After walking to the office door, she knocked on the door first, and then after waiting for no response for a while, she skillfully turned the handle and pushed the door open. Because there were only some bad premonitions, and there was no direct venom warning, Chen Linan did not stop Deborah Whitman from opening the door, but just paid close attention to and guarded carefully the whole time. When the office door opened, there was no one in the dimly lit office. Strange. At this time, Dr. Connors usually conducts experiments here. Why isn't he here today? Looking at the empty experimental area, Deborah Whitman also said with some doubts. While she was talking, there was a sudden sound in the office with the closed door in the lounge. Hearing the noise, Deborah Whitman also walked over there and asked, are you in there? Dr. Connors. This human being is so courageous. Isn't she afraid of something suddenly coming out from inside? Venom also complained in his mind as he looked at the fearless and rampant Deborah. She doesn't notice anything, and with me and Peter around, she may not think of any danger. Chen Linan responded to the Venom while walking cautiously with Deborah. He observed Peter Parker from the corner of his eye, and found that the other party was also frowning like him, looking around vigilantly. It seemed that he also had that bad feeling, but there was no response to the spider sensor. Just when they walked to the door and were about to open the door to the lounge, a strong warning sounded in the minds of Peter and Chen Linan at the same time. Be careful. Peter, who was closer to Deborah, pulled her directly to the side, and at the same time, Chen Linan also dodged to the other side. Boom! A table flew directly out of the lounge, smashed the door of the lounge, and fell to the ground in the experimental area outside. Looking inside through the broken door, I saw a huge figure squatting on the window. He also carried a huge thing wrapped in cloth on his shoulders. I didn't know what it was. After throwing the table, the figure looked back at them with scarlet eyes, and then jumped straight down the stairs. Lizardman, how could he appear in school? The same question appeared in the minds of Chen Linan and Peter. Neither of them thought that the bad feeling that existed from the very beginning pointed to the Lizardman. Shouldn't this guy be working in the sewer crossing subway station? Why did they suddenly come to their school in Dr. Connor's laboratory? Seeing the lizard man jumping out of the window, Chen Linan also hurried to the window, but he observed carefully for a long time but found nothing, and he didn't even know how the man escaped after jumping. Oh my God, it's terrible. What is that? His eyes are like devils. Deborah was obviously frightened, and her voice trembled. Peter also squatted beside her at this time and comforted her. Don't be afraid, he has already left. What was he carrying on his shoulders just now? Did you two see it clearly? Chen Linan walked back from the window and asked the two of them. Peter frowned when he heard this and said, it seems to be wrapped very tightly and not exposed at all. What kind of instruments and equipment is it? It can't be Dr. Connor's. Deborah shouted in fear and disbelief. She asked why Dr. Connors was not there. It turned out that he was captured by that weirdo. It doesn't look very similar in shape. Chen Linan recalled carefully. But anyway, the thing that the monster took away must have something to do with Dr. Connors. I don't know where Dr. Connors is now. I remember the address of his home. I'll go over to see what's going on in a while. Peter said while rubbing his chin. Leon, you stay here with Deborah. The police may come to check the situation in a while. Hearing Peter's words, Chen Linan also knew that the other party was trying to distract him so that he could find Dr. Connors, but he did not tell the truth and just nodded. After Peter left, he could also find an excuse to slip away, and then follow him to Dr. Connor's house. After Peter left the laboratory building, he found a place where there was no one and changed into Spider-Man's clothes. While he was flying around the city quickly, he was thinking about the experiments he had done with Dr. Connors before. It's amazing, Peter, did you see it? I just added a little lizard gene to that mouse and then recombined it with new genes, and its severed limbs grew back. Dr. Connors looked excited. He looked at the lively mice in the cage and said to Peter. You must know that a few minutes ago, this mouse only had 3 legs, and in this short period of time, a new leg grew out of its severed limb, and it was very flexible without any discomfort. Peter also looked excited and surprised. I still can't believe my eyes, this is simply amazing. Dr. Connors took the mouse in his hand and observed it carefully for a moment, then handed it to Peter. This is just the beginning. Dr. Connors continued. Just imagine, if we apply this technology to the human body, then those disabled humans will be reborn, and some diseases that cannot be cured now will be solved. As he spoke, he touched the empty cuff of his right hand with his left hand, which was also his dream. Closing square bracket. After flying past a street again, Peter also stopped to recall, and thought to himself, so now someone coveted this great technology, stole it, and created a monster. No, I must prevent the situation from getting worse. Peter made up his mind. On the roof of the building behind, Chen Linan was watching Peter flying between buildings. Feeling that the distance was almost the same, Chen Linan used his legs to jump up high, from the top floor of a building to the top of another building in the distance. With the blessing of Venom, his jumping ability has been greatly improved. That idiot has sped up, we have to hurry up too. Seeing Peter getting faster and faster, Venom also urged Chen Linan to speed up. The two of them walked forward in the city one after another, and soon came to a house. The lights were still on in the house, and it seemed that someone was walking inside. There were still many photos hanging on the trees in the yard. Chen Linan could see that there were probably a family of 3. Chen Linan was still observing the surroundings of the house, and Peter had already entered the house first. Just as Peter opened the door and walked in, he saw a huge lizard jumping out of the window carrying a woman. A little boy was sitting on the ground crying, trying to stop the lizard man, but he was afraid to go forward. Peter cursed in a low voice as he shot out a thread of spider silk, trying to stop the lizard man. But the opponent was already on guard, and after throwing a pot casually, he intercepted his spider silk in the air. Just when Peter was in a hurry, Chen Linan suddenly fell from the air and kicked the lizard man out of the way. The woman on his shoulders was also caught by Chen Linan, and then placed on the ground. "Ma'am, are you okay?" This brown-haired, gentle-looking middle-aged woman should be the wife of Dr. Connors. Fortunately, he stopped the lizard man in time, which prevented the tragedy from happening. "Margaret." The lizard man opened and closed his big mouth, and he still uttered a name fairly clearly. Mrs. Connors, Margaret, who had just stood firm just now, also covered her face in grief after hearing the lizard man's shout. "Please, don't hurt him, Kurt, he didn't want to hurt me." Mrs. Connors begged Chen Linan. "Wait, what's going on? What did you call that monster?" "Kurt, Connors." Kurt. Hearing Mrs. Connors pleading, Chen Linan was also shocked. This lizard man turns out to be Dr. Connors. What on earth is going on? Could it be that he was experimenting on himself? At this time, Peter also jumped out of the window with the child in his arms. He had just heard what Mrs. Connors said, and the little boy had just said that the lizard man was his father. Seeing the appearance of Venom and Spider-Man, the lizard man also gave up on taking his wife away, turned around and left here. Chen Linan and Peter both wanted to catch up, but Mrs. Connors stopped them and begged, "Please let him go, don't hurt him, he really didn't mean it." Seeing that Mrs. Connors was mentally unstable and about to collapse, Chen Linan and Peter also looked at each other and then stopped. They have no way to keep Mrs. Connors and little Connors here like this. Although the lizard man has already run away, his den is in the underground space. Although it is a bit difficult to find, they are not impossible. Peter and Chen Linan brought Mrs. Connors and little Connors back home, and poured them a glass of water to calm their emotions. Dr. Connors turned out to be a lizard man, which was a bit unexpected for the two of them. What is going on? Why did Dr. Connors become like this? After Mrs. Connors's mood stabilized a little, Peter asked his doubts. Chen Linan also looked at Mrs. Connors waiting for her answer, and he was equally curious about this question. Mrs. Connors lowered her head, holding the cup in her hands, and said with a sad look in her eyes, "It's all because of that device," Kurt called it the new genetic recombination system. He has been obsessed with research in this area some time ago. The success of animal experiments has greatly increased his confidence. He can't wait to apply this technology to humans. One day he finally decided to use himself for this experiment. He injected himself with lizard DNA, and then used the new gene recombination system. At first we thought he was successful because his arms grew out and I haven't seen him so happy for a long time. But it didn't last long, and it wasn't long before he started to look like a lizard. Having said that, Mrs. Connors also covered her face and sobbed. "I dare not tell anyone, and I dare not call the police. I am afraid that the police will hurt him. Although he turned into a monster, he never wanted to hurt us." After listening to Mrs. Connors' narration, Chen Linan also continued to ask, "Then why did he arrest those people recently?" "I think he wanted to continue his experiment." Mrs. Connors continued. "After he turned into a lizard, he once said that his experiment was not perfect yet, and he wanted to continue to perfect this technology. So I think he captured those people just to continue his research. So what he took away from the laboratory today should be part of the new genetic recombination system." Chen Linan thought to himself. After listening to Mrs. Connors' words, Peter also turned his head to look at Chen Linan and said, "I think we should stop him as soon as possible and rescue those caught. I don't want to have a few more lizard men tomorrow." Chen Linan also nodded after hearing this. He also knew the seriousness of the situation now. After exhorting Mrs. Connors again, they left here and entered the sewer through the nearest manhole cover. If that guy wants to leave as quickly as possible, he will definitely go down the nearest manhole cover," Peter said while observing the marks on the ground. Sure enough, they found huge footprints and traces of tail dragging in one direction. They walked along the traces left behind for a while, and soon came to an area with no ground and only water. There are several drainage channels in this area, and they have to pick a channel to go in if they want to continue searching. In addition to the passages that seem to be relatively small and the lizardmen should not be able to pass through, there are 3 large passages that cannot be eliminated. Chen Linan looked at the drainage passage and said to Peter. Peter also responded after hearing the words, "It seems that the next step is only luck. Let's pick one in and see if there are any clues. If you don't have to, let's go to the third one after we quit." Chen Linan also nodded after hearing this. This is the best method at present. Just as he was about to enter his passage, Peter stopped him again, and then said with some hesitation, "If possible, please don't kill the lizardman directly. As far as I know, this experiment should still be reversible. As long as we get the corresponding equipment and perform the opposite new genetic recombination on him, we should be able to restore him to his original state. He still has a family and children." After hearing Peter's persuasion and explanation, Chen Linan also nodded. He had been hesitating on this issue. If, as Peter said, he could be reversed into a human state using a new genetic recombinant, that would of course be the best. After talking about this matter, they each began to choose the passageway. After choosing the passage based on their feelings, they set off separately. The water flow in the passage was so fast that Chen Linan could only walk backwards from the top, looking for any clues as he walked. The lizard man is so big, walking through the passage should leave some traces. Chen Linan thought carefully while observing the following. The more you go in, the less the water flow, and the traces covered by the water flow gradually appear. "I'm so lucky. I picked the right place right away," Chen Linan said happily when he saw that there were indeed traces. Venom also said eagerly, "We can't let him run away this time." After walking forward for a few minutes, the water in the channel had become very shallow, and a large fence blocked the entrance. "It should be enough to go out from here. Observe the situation first." Chen Linan was lying on the fence to observe the situation outside while thinking. Outside the fence is also a circle of water, surrounding the middle platform like a moat. Dr. Lizard, also known as Dr. Connors, is busy on the table in the middle. Next to him are many instruments and an instrument that looks similar to a machine gun. However, in front of him is not a gun muzzle, but a radar like a small umbrella-shaped gun head. There are several holes with fences on the wall next to the table, and there are a lot of food in the holes. It seems that there should be people who were caught here by the lizard people at that time. Peter shouldn't be able to come here for a while. It will take some time from the time he notices that there is nothing going on over there, then returns, and then comes here. Chen Linan was thinking in his mind while looking at the lizard man. At this moment, the lizard man picked up the gun-shaped device and pressed a button on the device platform to open a fence holding the hostages. He wants to transform those hostages into lizardmen. He can't wait any longer. Chen Linan directly cut off the connection between the fences with his sharp fingers, and then rushed out of the hole. With his strong jumping ability, he jumped directly from the hole to the location of the lizard man. The sharp claws on his hands shone with metallic luster. If it landed firmly on the lizard man, it would definitely dig out a big hole. The lizard man reacted very quickly. When he saw Chen Linan attacking him, he swiped it fiercely with his thick tail, and carefully put the device back into the distance. It could be seen that he was also very scared. "Break things." The thick tail whizzed through the air and rushed towards Chen Linan with full force. Without the slightest fear, Chen Linan first landed lightly on the ground, then waved his claws and cut the thick tail into several pieces. The lizard man was very annoyed when his tail was broken, and the pain caused him to roar crazily from time to time. But at this time, his healing speed seemed to be accelerated again, and the severed tail healed quickly with breathing and then regenerated. As time goes on, he is becoming more and more like a lizard, which may be irreversible in the future. Seeing the further improvement of the lizard man's ability, Chen Linan's heart is also very heavy, which shows that the part of the people belonging to Dr. Connor's genes are increasingly suppressed. He keeps coming to your door again and again. Looking at Chen Linan who appeared in front of him again, the lizard man cursed in a hoarse voice. Hearing such a smooth cursing, Venom also complained to Chen Linan. I thought he could only hiss, but I didn't expect his words to be more and more slick, which is just the opposite of its genetic condition. Who says it's not? His physical ability and quality are becoming less and less human, and his brain is exceptionally bright. Didn't you see that he has prepared all the equipment and facilities that should be used? Chen Linan also responded. The angry lizard man rushed towards Chen Linan, and he probably realized that if he didn't deal with him, his plan would be impossible to proceed. With the fight against the lizard man, Chen Linan also became more aware of his changes. His armor and muscles became stronger and thicker, he moved faster, and his claws became sharper. And his abnormal healing ability is even more amazing at this time. No matter how deep the wound Chen Linan left him in the fight, his injury will begin to heal visibly to the naked eye. Why do I feel that his recovery ability is going to be stronger than mine? Chen Linan thought that there was Venom, and his recovery ability should be at the top level, but the lizard man is constantly challenging his cognitive limit. Get out of here. While his hands kept colliding, the lizard man used his tail to give Chen Linan a vicious sneak attack. Chen Linan was instantly knocked into the wall, smashing the rocks so much that a big crater appeared. But soon he ejected, stepped on the wall and jumped back again. This time there were many tentacles behind him, each one exuding a dark metallic luster. Originally, because he knew that the other party was Dr. Connors, he always wanted to put control first and try not to harm his life, but at this moment it seemed that he couldn't do it without a heavy hand. And based on Dr. Connors's healing ability at this time, even if Chen Linan really wanted to kill him with one blow, he might not be able to succeed. I'm sorry, Doctor, it seems that we can't make more holes in your body. Chen Linan shouted and rushed forward. His sharp claws kept leaving scratches on the lizard man's body, preventing him from counter-attacking, while the tentacles behind him were like insidious assassins, waiting for an opportunity to pierce his limbs directly. Whoa! Black lights flashed, and Chen Linan seized the opportunity to directly penetrate his left hand and right leg with his tentacles. Although the other tentacles did not penetrate directly, they also left a lot of damage that was deeply visible to the bones. The lizard man roared enduring the severe pain, and then directly slammed heavily on the operating table with his still intact right arm and pressed a button. As the button was pressed, all the bars holding the hostages on the wall popped open. Chen Linan was still wondering what was going on, but the reality quickly gave him the answer. I saw pairs of bright red eyes lighting up in the entrances of the caves, and a roar belonging to a wild beast echoed throughout the underground space. He has turned all the hostages into lizards, Venom said solemnly. Chen Linan also responded with a heavy voice while fighting. I thought he was preparing to convert the hostages just now, but I didn't expect that he had already completed converting them during this time. Plop, plop, each lizard claw fell from the hole in the wall, and then gathered from the surrounding water towards the central round platform. Their eyes were all fixed on Chen Linan, their eyes full of killing intent, eager to tear the prey into pieces. Although their size is not as large as the lizard man that Dr. Connors may have turned into, they are still much larger than ordinary people. A few faster swimmers had already climbed onto the round platform in the middle, and then quickly rushed towards Chen Linan. They waved their sharp claws and opened their mouths wide, wishing to tear him apart. At this time, Chen Linan was fighting fiercely with the lizard man, and had already suppressed the opponent at an absolute disadvantage. Now only one leg and tail of the lizard man can move freely, and the rest are all pierced by Chen Linan's tentacles, controlling his movements. The lizard minions attacked Chen Linan crazily, but they were all pushed back by Chen Linan's tentacles and timed counterattacks. As time passed, more and more lizard minions crawled up. Some of the lizard minions besieged Chen Linan, while the other rushed towards the lizard man for some reason. They opened their mouths wide, revealing their big mouths full of sharp teeth, and waved their sharp claws to bite and claw at the lizard man's body. For a moment, blood splattered and sprayed, and the entire table was covered with lizard man blood. Chen Linan was already shocked by this scene. He didn't know what was going on and why these lizard minions ran to attack the lizard people and were so ruthless. His doubts were soon answered, because the lizard man in front of him, who had been bitten and bruised, actually tore off his own arms and legs and escaped Chen Linan's control. The lizard minions attacking him were due to his instruction and control, and Chen Linan penetrated his arms and legs with his tentacles. So in order to escape control as soon as possible, he came up with this bloody, but quick and convenient method. After escaping from control, he quickly moved away from the central platform, and commanded all the lizard minions to besiege Chen Linan, trapping him in place to give him a chance to heal his wounds. He has become more and more terrifying. I seem to see a cold-blooded monster taking shape. Venom was also shocked by the lizard man's operation. Chen Lian also gritted his teeth, trying to think of a solution while fighting off the lizard minions that were surrounding him. At this time, his eyes were also on the instrument that the lizard man had been very precious just now. If he guessed correctly, this instrument should be the latest research result of Dr. Connors during this period, the new genetic recombination instrument. This instrument is more powerful, smaller, and more effective than before. Thinking of this, Chen Linan moved towards the place where the new gene recombination instrument was placed while fighting off those lizard minions. After seeing the new gene recombination instrument, Chen Linan stretched out his wrist, trying to pull the instrument over with spider silk. But as soon as his spider silk was connected to the instrument, an angry lizard man jumped from a distance and ripped off his spider silk. In just a short while, the limbs of the lizard man had been torn off, and the limbs had grown out. Except for the smaller size, it was basically the same as before. "Don't touch my things, you bloody fool," the lizard man roared, while commanding the lizard minions to attack Chen Linan even more frantically. At this moment, another white spider silk shot out from above, snatching the new genetic recombination device directly from the lizard man's hand. "Why am I missing from such a lively party?" Peter joked while holding the new genetic recombinator in his hand and inspecting it carefully. "Hold on, I need 2 minutes to debug the device and reverse its function," Peter said to Chen Linan, and then used the spider silk to throw away several lizard minions. Chen Linan also responded after hearing this, "You'd better hurry up. Although they can't hurt me, it's really difficult for me to continue to control the strength of my attack. These lizards should all be the previous hostages. If they are injured too much by me, it's not good if it's serious." Seeing this situation and the sudden appearance of Spider-Man, the lizard man also rushed towards Spider-Man even more angrily, wanting to get back the new genetic recombination device. This is an important tool for him to purify mankind and create a new ethnic group. "Wall crawler, why are you stopping me? This is an important step in human evolution and is the inevitable future. Can't you see how excellent and powerful we are now? Why should we prevent humans from getting better?" While Peter was jumping on the wall to avoid the attacks of the lizard men, he also complained, "Are you sure you have become better? I bet you can't even type on the keyboard, and maybe you can't even get pizza live." His hands kept fiddling with the new genetic recombination instrument, setting up a new reversal program. Previously, the new gene recombination machine was set up to fuse human genes with lizard genes, and then arrange and recombine them. Now he wants to reverse this process, remove the lizard genes, amplify the human genes, and restore them to their original state. After chasing for a long time with no results, the lizard man also stopped, and then he took out a few bottles of turquoise liquid from the drawer of the experimental table next to him. These ones are darker and brighter in color than the ones Chen Linan saw before, and the dosage seems to be much larger than before. Bang, bang, bang. Several large glass test tubes were thrown to the ground by the lizard man. Green liquid seeped out from the broken glass and evaporated into fog in the air. This time the fog was obviously stronger than the last time. "Hold your breath." After seeing the mist rising, Peter also hastily reminded loudly, "This is an aerosol made from lizard DNA. It was liquid injection before, and it is obviously made like this to mass-produce lizardmen. Inject DNA first, and then use a new gene recombinator to perform genetic recombination. This is the process of Dr. Connors's experiment. This is how the previous experiments on mutilated limbs of mice were performed. Now he has improved the process, turning the injection into an aerosol, and then miniaturized the new genetic recombination machine to make it easier to carry and operate. It is obvious that Dr. Connors wants to spread the aerosol in the whole city on a large scale, and then manufacture lizardmen in batches. As he said, in his opinion, this is a kind of purification and improvement of human genes. Fortunately, it came in time. If you really let him spread out, you will be in big trouble. Peter secretly rejoiced in his heart, while holding his breath and making the final adjustment. Just when he was concentrating on debugging the equipment, the huge figure of the lizard man suddenly emerged from the mist and threw him directly into his arms. Both of them fell from the wall at the same time, and fell directly into the water below. There were already many lizard minions lying on the round platform below. They were all knocked unconscious by Chen Linan. Stimulated by the green weapons, the remaining lizard minions began to grow even larger, their scales became harder, and even the claws on their hands began to slowly extend. MD. This aerosol stimulated their sea lizard DNA. Why are Peter's movements so slow? If he doesn't become irreversible in a while, he will be in trouble. Chen Linan said in his mind while fighting back the more wild and brutal lizard people. He thought anxiously. After another 10 seconds, a blinding white light suddenly lit up in the water below. Then Spider-Man Peter Parker pulled Professor Connors, who had turned into a human form, out of the water and returned to the round platform. Phew, it's good to catch up, Peter said as he raised the new genetic recombination instrument in his hand, and then aimed at those berserk lizard minions. I'll count to 3. Remember to dodge, Peter shouted at Chen Linan, who was still entangled with the lizard's minions. Chen Linan also responded loudly after hearing the words, "Understood, hurry up." 321. Chirp. A ray of white light shot out from the instrument in his hand and shot straight towards the lizard men. When the countdown came to 1, Chen Linan also shot a spider thread to the top and left the round platform in time. With the shining of the white light, those berserk lizard minions also stopped, the blood red in their eyes slowly faded, the green scales on their bodies also slowly disappeared, and their sizes gradually returned to their original size. After a while, the light dissipated, and the people lying on the circular platform at this moment were all hostages captured by the lizard people. Finally solved. These lizard men are really difficult to deal with, especially since they haven't been able to deal with them harshly. Chen Linan said after letting out a sigh of relief. If it weren't for these lizard men who could turn back into humans, he wouldn't have to hold back. You must know that it is much more difficult to grasp the strength to knock them out than to directly kill them, and it also consumes energy. At this time, Dr. Connors also woke up from his coma, and his right arm became empty again. Oh my God, what have I done? I almost killed so many people. After realizing what he had done, Dr. Connors also confessed while covering his face in pain. If he hadn't been stopped now, it was frightening just to think about how messed up New York would be. Fortunately, no big trouble was caused. Dr. Connors, you must be cautious when doing experiments next time. Peter urged Dr. Connors. I understand, thank you very much this time, I almost made an irreparable mistake. Dr. Connors sincerely expressed his gratitude and apology to Peter and Chen Linan. We will keep this matter a secret, and hope you can learn from this lesson. Chen Linan also said with some exhaustion. Dr. Connors was also mortified by what he said. Okay, your wife and children are still waiting at home, I'll take you back first. Chen Linan then prepared to take Dr. Connors out of a passage. The rest of the citizens will be left to you. Spider-Man, you came late just now, so I will trouble you a little more now. Chen Linan waved to Peter while leading Dr. Connors into the passage. Peter helplessly held his forehead and looked at so many people next to him with some worry. This guy is really lazy. As he spoke, he shot out a thread of spider silk and took a camera from a hidden passage. I got a photo worth $1,000. I will tell my aunt the good news tonight. Peter put away the camera and film, thinking silently in his heart. When he came home today, he saw Aunt May worrying about the bills. The kind woman never told him about it. For this reason, Peter also felt guilty for thinking about buying things. He decided to use the 1,000 yuan to pay the bill, and then took the rest of the money to take Aunt May to a big meal. Aunt May has taken care of him like a mother for many years, and now that he has grown up, it is time to repay Aunt May. While secretly making up his mind, he woke up the people next to him one by one, and asked them to follow him out of the passage. The successful conclusion of the matter also made him feel a little more relaxed. Fortunately, there was no major commotion and no casualties. After today everything will be back on track and the lizard man will become a true urban legend. The photos taken by Peter undoubtedly became the headlines of the next day, and the discussion about the lizard men also became lively for a while. However, because the same thing as before did not happen again in the follow-up, the heat of the discussion continued for a few more days and then dropped. This morning, after Chen Linan and Venom finished their breakfast as usual, today's newspaper was delivered to his door. After Venom brought in the newspaper, he skillfully brought the bowls and chopsticks back to the kitchen to start cleaning, while Chen Linan sat on the sofa and began to browse the newspaper. At this time, the front page of the newspaper is no longer a lizard man, but a sign of Venom after a period of fermentation. It seems that the follow-up to the lizard man incident can no longer benefit the media public, so they have chosen what they think is the next hot topic, which is Venom. During this period of time, when Chen Linan went out to punish criminals, he would leave such a sign, and after a period of fermentation, it also entered the public eye. Unsurprisingly, the front page news regarded him as a perverted murderer. The media believed that although he only targeted criminals, it could not deny that this was an act of disregarding life and flouting the law. Seeing this, Chen Linan also turned on the TV. Today's Horn News was reported by James early in the morning, but what people didn't expect was that he was no longer talking about Spider-Man today, but Venom, which has recently become famous. This Venom must be a perverted murderer without a doubt, maybe he just escaped from that mental hospital. Although my colleagues have repeatedly reminded me that there is no need to provoke a murderous demon, but for the rights of the people of New York, I think I must speak out for them, and I am not afraid of being targeted by anyone. At the end of the broadcast, I want to speak to the police system on behalf of the general public in New York City, hoping that they can make better use of taxpayer money, instead of just using it to buy donuts and leaving New York City in the hands of two masked villains. One Spider-Man has already made New York City dangerous. It's hard to imagine another perverted murderer appearing now. I hope God bless New York City so that all citizens can get rid of the shadow of these masked monsters as soon as possible. Looking at the frowning, very worried and serious James on TV, Chen Linan couldn't help baring his teeth. This mustache's words are indeed very sharp. If he is not Venom himself, he must have become very anxious, thinking that New York has no future. No wonder the sales and ratings of Bugle Daily have been rising. This little old man is very good at selling anxiety. Chen Linan watched the news on TV and said to Venom, who had just finished washing the dishes and came to the living room. Venom also glanced at the TV and said disdainfully, "He has always been like this, and now he has another person who can create a topic besides Spider-Man. I don't care. With his propaganda, the crime rate should drop a lot. After all, they don't want to lose their heads." Chen Linan chuckled indifferently. "I do kill people anyway. The more terrifying and perverted they spread my image, the better the effect. Maybe your snacks will become more and more difficult to find in the future." Chen Linan looked at the Venom and laughed. Venom bared his teeth when he heard the words and mocked, "I won't worry about this. I know that the nature of human beings will not change. No matter how the crime rate drops, there will always be people who will commit crimes for profit. As long as human beings are not extinct, my snacks will never disappear." Chen Linan recognized Venom's words about exploring the nature of human beings. He nodded in agreement and said, "That's good. If you can't chew the head in the future, don't cry and shout for chocolate with me." Venom felt unhappy when he heard the words, and sat down on the sofa angrily and gnawed on the chocolate. This time, it may have thought that the chocolate was James's head with a smelly and hard mustache. When he gnawed it, it clicked, which made people's teeth sore. Fighting criminals at night and training his own abilities only occupied part of Chen Linan's time. He spent more time on research and entrepreneurship. After this period of continuous research and communication with his company's researchers, they have achieved good results in both the biotechnology sector and the communication technology sector. The first is the result of the biotechnology sector. Chen Linan invented an ointment, Trauma Type 01, based on his previous research and subsequent research and development. This product is mainly used for trauma, and there are different classifications according to the type of injury. For example, it is specially designed for mechanical injuries, that is, cuts, falls, and animal bites. There are also special styles designed for chemical injuries, that is, scalds and burns. Simply put, it is a drug similar to Yunnan Baiyao, but with a weaker effect. With this ointment as the centerpiece, they have launched and extended a series of products to meet the needs of families and hospitals for this type of trauma. The launch of Trauma Type 01 quickly enabled Chen Linen's pharmaceutical company to quickly gain a foothold and begin to grow rapidly. In response to market feedback, the product was refined in various aspects, allowing this type of market to be quickly seized by Zero Pharmaceuticals. After the product became well-known, the military of the beautiful country quickly turned their attention to medicine. In order to open up the market for the military and win their orders, No. 02 Medicine also specially launched the Trauma 50.00 model specially for military use. The effect of this model higher than that of the products on the market. The military of the beautiful country was very satisfied with this special product, so Chen Linan also successfully opened a gold market. There are wound medicines, of course internal wound medicines, and various types of other medicines. This good start is the perfect start for smooth cooperation in the future. In addition to the good development of the biotechnology sector, the communication technology sector has also made great progress. According to Chen Linen's idea of a smartphone, they also designed a full-screen mobile phone, and named it Mobius One with the Mobius ring as the symbol. Although limited by the development of technology of the times, this mobile phone still has some flaws, but its beautiful and simple appearance and novel functions have completely subverted people's previous impressions of mobile phones. You can refer to the shock brought by Apple's press conference that year. Afterwards, this smart full-screen mobile phone quickly became popular, making the reputation of No. 2 industry more and more famous. Perhaps because the general public can really feel it, and it is indeed an epoch-making product, the attention brought by Mobius One is obviously many times more exaggerated than that of Trauma 01. Although such enthusiastic attention has brought great benefits to No. 0 industry, it also attracts many malicious eyes. Chen Linan even skipped a few classes during this period, just to deal with these matters. He once again emphasized that development should be based on safety, and has absorbed many high-end talents to upgrade the company's management. This series of safe measures, coupled with the previous relationship with the military, finally stabilized the situation. After finishing all this, Chen Linan only felt that it was more strenuous than beating 10 lizardmen, but he still felt very happy when he thought of the success he had achieved. If the old friend is still there, he will definitely be very proud. In the office on the top floor of the Fisker building in New York City, Jin Bin was listening to Alistair's research report while closing his eyes and thinking about something. At this moment, the bulletproof floor-to-ceiling windows of this floor were suddenly shattered by a pumpkin bomb, and at the same time there was a burst of weird and wild laughter from outside. Hey 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 hey, ha 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 ha, it's time for the show, dear Fisk, are you ready? Following the sound, a monster with a khaki mask stepping on an aircraft came in through the broken floor-to-ceiling window. It was the evil ghost hired to kill. Seeing the evil spirit suddenly appearing here, Jin didn't feel a trace of fear or panic. He waved his hand calmly, and many heavily armed fighters appeared from all over his office in an instant. They held the laser guns in their hands and kept shooting at the evil spirits. While dodging quickly, the evil spirits continued to harvest the lives of these people with the upgraded aircraft. They were either shot through by the laser light, or their necks were cut by sharp blades. Ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. While the evil ghost kept laughing wildly at his masterpiece, a gun barrel with a strange shape was aimed at him in the dark. Bang! With the sound of a cannon, the evil ghost's strange laughter stopped abruptly, and he was caught on the ground by a huge and hard metal net. The evil ghost caught in the net also separated from the aircraft, and then fell heavily on the ground. When he fell on the ground and shook his head in a daze, the armed men next to him immediately surrounded him and pointed their guns at his head. Hey, I think this is a misunderstanding. The evil ghost smiled awkwardly with his hands up, completely lost the complacency and arrogance just now, for fear that Jin Bing would order him to collapse himself. To be honest, he didn't expect that this unexpected surprise attack would not achieve the expected results at all, but he himself was firmly manipulated by the opponent. Although he killed many people, the other party didn't care about these casualties, thinking that as long as he was caught, it would be worth it. Thinking of this, the evil ghost also put away its original contempt for the burly figure not far away. This person really kills people without blinking an eye. Seeing that the evil spirit was subdued, Jin Bing stepped out from the layers of guards beside him, then looked at the evil spirit deeply and said, "Do you think I'm not prepared for an attack on you? A clown in a costume. Now, tell me who hired you." Kingpin sat on the special boss chair aside and asked. I think this secret should be able to exchange my life, right? After all, there is no unresolvable hatred between us, and I just use money to do things. The evil spirit didn't immediately answer the other party's question. Of course, valuable things must be exchanged for other valuable things. At this moment, he just wanted to save his own life and promote his employment business by the way. Hearing the ghost's words, Jin Bing laughed softly as if hearing a funny joke. It seems that you are indeed a clown, and you have a great talent for telling jokes. After speaking, he suddenly put away his smile and looked at the evil ghost with a sense of oppression and said, You have to know, no one can negotiate terms with me. The evil ghost also tensed up when he heard Jin Bin's words, worried that the other party might be some kind of psychopath. Even if he didn't know the person who hired him, he should kill him. This guy is definitely not a simple entrepreneur. Norman Osborn tricked me. The evil ghost cursed in his heart. He never thought that this order would be so dangerous. After all, although he is crazy, he still has sense. If he had known that Wilson Fiskovu had his own armed forces to protect him, then he would not have agreed to Norman Osborn's request so easily, or even if he agreed, he would have been fully prepared to act again. Jin Bin looked at the evil ghost's mask and said in a less oppressive tone, But I can also give you a chance to trade with me. As long as you tell me the person behind you, then I will let you go. And maybe I'll entrust you to do something later. A very fair price. The evil ghost nodded upon hearing the words, and then said simply, The person who hired me is Norman Osborn, who asked me to kill you, including today and the previous one. Yes. I'm just a hired person. I don't know what kind of enmity there is between you. Speaking of which, that guy never told me that you have such great energy. Jin Bing also frowned when he heard the words. It turned out that the person who wanted him to die turned out to be Norman Osborn. He thought a lot about the person who wanted to kill him, but he really didn't think that it would be this Osborn who was already in his hands. Norman Osborn had previously turned to Jin because of the Osborn Group's business and borrowed a large amount of usury. Later, because of repaying the debt, he had to agree to Jin and many unreasonable demands, including various inventions and researches in his life. These are the most critical things of the Osborn Group. Norman Osborn realized that this was a trap at the beginning after Jin Bing said his demands. Jin Bing wanted the Osborn Group to lend him so much money, and even cause the Osborn Group to need capital turnover. It may be a trap deliberately set by Jin Bing. At that time, Norman Osborn had sensed Jin Bing's sinister intentions, but the situation had already developed like that, and he had no effective way to stop it. After thinking for a long time, the distressed Norman Osborn finally decided to secretly get rid of Jin in the beginning of all troubles, but because he was afraid of any accidents in the experiment, he found the evil ghost who was still a street gangster at that time, and reached such an agreement with him. In this way, after being strengthened and equipped with weapons by Norman Osborn, the originally unknown street gangster became a well-known evil spirit today. Just when Jin Bin was surprised and thinking that the person in the darkness turned out to be Norman Osborn, the evil ghost also quietly pressed the button on his arm. After the evil ghost quietly pressed the button, the aircraft not far away from him ejected many blades with lasers, and then quickly spun and flew up. The net that trapped them was instantly torn apart by the laser blade of the aircraft. At the same time, the evil spirits also threw out a green pumpkin bomb. The green pumpkin bomb spewed out a rich smoke as soon as it touched the ground. Green smoke. The strong pungent smell made everyone present cough unceasingly, and the evil ghost quickly stepped on the aircraft and left here taking advantage of the concealment of the green smoke. Hey 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 hey, ha 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 ha, I hope we will have a chance to do business in the future, Mr. Fisk. The evil ghost quickly left here with only a string of strange smiles. Although the other party had just reached an agreement with him, he still didn't dare to use his life as a bargaining chip, so he came up with a way to get out of the predicament unexpectedly. It took a few minutes for the smoke in the office to dissipate. Alistair wiped the smoked tears from the corners of his eyes, turned to Jin and said, Ahem. Do you want to track down this evil spirit? Hearing Alistair's words, Jin folded the handkerchief that wiped his eyes and said, Don't worry about him, he's just a small character, and he might be useful in the future. After finishing talking, Jin Bing thought of something else, and said to Alistair with cold eyes, The most important thing now is Norman Osborn. Didn't I think that this mouse would dare to send someone to assassinate me? I was almost bitten by my own prey. It's really surprising. Have someone get rid of him, and remember to do it cleanly. Since he is playing this kind of trick with me, then I will have fun with him. If you don't want to give me the Osborn group, he will only die. After he's dead, the Osborn group still can't escape my palm, it's just a matter of spending more time. Alistair nodded when he heard the words, and then let the remaining armed personnel drag the corpse on the ground out of the office. Then someone came and cleaned the entire floor, completely removing the blood on the floor, and restoring the floor to a clean and bright state. Jin Bing sat at the desk, thinking about all the things that happened today, and felt extremely irritable. Spider-Man, Goblin, Norman Osborn, and Venom, these people have made his life and business very unsatisfactory recently. Sooner or later, I will clean you up one by one. Jin Bin clenched his fist softly. Osborn Group, Penthouse Lab. Norman opened the door of the laboratory with his ID card, and the evil spirit told him that he would go to assassinate Wilson Fisk again today, and he came to collect the results now. In the dimly lit laboratory, only the computer screen was shining with a faint blue light. The evil spirit who was supposed to tell him the result of the assassination was standing in front of the computer and operating something, not caring about himself who came in through the door. Seeing this scene, Norman Osborn thought of something instantly, and saw that he immediately took a gun from the shelf next to him, and then quickly pulled the trigger towards the evil spirit. "What did you do to my information?" Norman Osborn roared as he shot, wishing he could wipe out the strange man in front of him immediately. Hey 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 hey, ha 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 ha, you were late, Osborn. Before the bullets fell on him, the evil spirit immediately controlled the aircraft and flew to his side, using it to block all the bullets shot by Norman Osborn. As the tinkling sounds continued to sound, countless bullets were blocked by the erected aircraft, unable to cause any harm to the evil spirits. Seeing this scene, Norman Osborn gritted his teeth even more. You must know that the aircraft and the equipment that the evil spirit is wearing are all designed and developed by himself. He originally wanted to use those materials to control the evil spirits in his own hands, to become his own sharp blade, and to do some inconvenient things for himself. As a result, the sharp blade had its own thoughts before it was used on the enemy, and began to stab him. Chapter 71. A stray bullet was blocked by the aircraft, and it shot Norman Osborn's own calf impartially, causing him to let out a scream. During the time of Norman's shooting, the evil ghost's operation of the computer had also been completed. He turned over and jumped onto the aircraft, laughing wantonly, and said to the furious Norman Osborn, "Hey hey hey hey. I have cleared all the data about me, you have lost your chips, poor Norman. Now you are a real wretch, ha 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 ha. You who have lost these chips are not worth mentioning in front of me. Compared to facing Wilson Fisk's revenge on you, it is more merciful for me to let you die happily." The evil ghost dropped a series of pumpkin bombs on the ground while talking. "This is my kindness to you, don't be too grateful to me. Then goodbye, poor Norman Osborn, ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha." After dropping these pumpkin bombs, the evil spirit immediately flew out from the big hole in the ceiling. Norman Osborn had no time to react. The countdown to the pumpkin bomb was over. The flames of the explosion engulfed his body in an instant, and the entire laboratory was burnt black. After an unknown amount of time, a scorched man crawled out from the ruins beside the wall. This man was none other than Norman Osborn. The flames of the explosion had almost completely destroyed his skin, making him on the verge of death. If it wasn't for the fact that he was standing on the sidelines just now, and that he had strengthened himself slightly harmlessly when he was researching the enhancement potion, he would have definitely turned into a charred black corpse now. But despite this, he is not far from death now. His strong desire to survive and endless hatred made him hold on to the last bit of strength and crawl towards the instrument in his memory that might save him. With his blurred vision, Norman Osborn identified the direction and kept crawling, dragging a trace on the floor like a bug. The next morning, outside the Osborn Group building, several black cars were waiting on the roadside, carefully observing everyone who came out. They were the killers who came to kill Norman Osborn, but it was strange that they hadn't seen Norman Osborn show up since last night. They were sure that Norman Osborn had indeed entered the Osborn mansion yesterday, but it had been more than one night now, and they were also very puzzled why no one came out. Doesn't Norman Osborn even need to go home? Just as they pressed their impetuousness and continued to observe with peace of mind, an unusual-looking nanny car finally drove out of the underground garage of the Osborne building. These killers were immediately refreshed when they saw this car appearing in their field of vision, because according to their information, this car was the specially modified nanny car that Norman Osborn often used. The car drove out of the parking lot, and then stopped at the gate of the Osborne group. After waiting there for a while, a figure they had been expecting for a long time finally appeared. After explaining something to the secretary beside him, Norman Osborn got into the nanny's car, and there were several cars full of bodyguards closely following the nanny's car, guarding the safety of Norman Osborn. As the nanny car moved slowly, the cars driven by the killers also followed in an inconspicuous way, and they would start this mission after driving to the crime scene they had prepared in advance. The specially made nanny car was driving slowly, and the killer's car was not far behind. As they kept moving away from Osborne, there were fewer and fewer cars on the road. Such an abnormal situation quickly aroused the suspicion of Norman Osborn's bodyguards, and they all took out their weapons, always on guard against the occurrence of abnormal situations. When the convoy reached an intersection, two large trucks suddenly rushed out from the side, and then separated the specially made nanny car one after the other. Seeing this situation, the surviving bodyguards also hurriedly got out of the car, then dug out all kinds of weapons they had prepared, and used the car as a cover to start a counterattack. At the same time, many armed men sprang out from the truck that intercepted the parking team. They removed the cover on the top of the truck, revealing several machine guns, and flanked the killer who had been following behind. Although Norman Osborn's bodyguards were all well-trained professionals, and their counterattacks were very quick and timely, but under the terrifying fire suppression and premeditated ambush design, their resistance was basically wiped out without causing any waves. When Norman Osborn's bodyguards were all wiped out, the specially made nanny car was also unbearable to the fierce firepower and began to become tattered. The leading killer with a machine gun kept pouring firepower at the nanny car, and the smile on his face gradually became unrestrained. It is really simple and joyful to destroy such a thing, and it is extremely addictive. He 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 he, ha 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 ha. A burst of strange laughter suddenly came from the nanny car that was about to be scrapped. The laughter was sharp and piercing, and it made people feel chilling and unrealistic when it sounded on such an occasion. The assassins around also put away their joking expressions at this time, and looked at each other in dismay. Even the leading assassin no longer smiled presumptuously at this time. His years of experience gave him an imperceptible premonition. Just as these people slowly stopped shooting strangely, several yellow pumpkin-shaped objects suddenly flew out of the broken windows of the nanny's car one by one, and then fell beside the killers. Be careful, get down. The leading killer also sensed something was wrong at this time, so he hurriedly shouted, wanting to remind everyone to get down and avoid immediately. But his shout still couldn't catch up with the speed of these pumpkin explosions. When his voice reached the ears of everyone present, the flames of the pumpkin bomb explosion had almost swallowed everyone present. A green figure also flew up from the fire at this time, and then flew straight towards the sky. Under his feet was a well-crafted and technologically sounding aircraft. He was also wearing green armor and a hideous devil mask on his face. It seems that his attire is very similar to the evil spirits that haunted some time ago, but both the color and the level of sophistication of the equipment are much better than those of the evil spirits. The turbulent explosion flames came and went quickly, and when this strange green figure hovered in the air, the tragedy on the ground was also revealed. At this time, the ground was already blackened by the bomb, and the cars and trucks beside it were also on fire due to the explosion. The nanny car of Norman Osborn in the middle was even more carefully taken care of by a bomb, and the metal frame was shattered and turned black. The surviving killers also climbed up from the ruins at this time, and the shock of the explosion made their heads a little dazed. Bang, bang, bang. Before they could recover, a series of bullets shot out from the front of the aerial vehicle, piercing through their arms, thighs, and even their heads. There were not many killers left, and there were not many left. He 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 he. Interesting. Really interesting. After the shooting game was over, the green monster hovering in the air immediately landed with a strange smile. He popped a razor-sharp short blade out of his arm, and walked like a walk in a garden, harvesting the surviving killers along the way. Whenever his short blade scratched their necks, blood gushed out, staining his dark green close-fitting armor black and red. Soon he killed everyone except the leader. Seeing the approaching green monster, the leader of the killer also dragged his injured body and crawled backwards. Although he knew it was useless, the desire to survive drove him, making him unable to die calmly like this. Ah! With a scream, the killer leader's calf was directly broken by the green monster, and his crawling was also forcibly terminated. Why are you running? Didn't we have a good time just now? The green monster twisted the soles of his feet, causing the calf under his feet to make the sound of bones breaking, and asked the killer leader in a sharp and weird voice. Kill me, you lunatic! The pale-faced leader of the killer kept panting and roaring, wanting to end his life quickly. He had already expected such a day in his line of work. He just wanted to die quickly at this moment, and he didn't want to continue to suffer at the hands of this weirdo. Woomy, the weirdo touched the eyes of his mask as if wiping his tears, looking funny and weird. After pretending to cry, he suddenly started to step on the killer leader's other leg while letting out a weird laugh. Hey. I'm so sad and you don't even comfort me. Wasn't the gibberish just now so embarrassing? Do you care about my life or death? Ha 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 ha. Hearing his words, the leader of the killer also suddenly realized something. He looked at the strange man in front of him with a trembling voice and said, "You are Norman Osborn. How come? Ha 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 ha. Congratulations, you guessed it right." The weirdo smiled strangely while taking off his mask. Under the mask was the target of their assassination this time, Norman Osborn, but at this moment his face was distorted and completely lost the dignity and seriousness he usually had on TV. After showing his face briefly, he put the mask back on his face and said with a strange smile, "It's just that it's not Norman Osborn now, that cowardly guy dare not do these things, now in front of you it's the Green Goblin, ha 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 ha. I know who sent you here, don't worry, you take a step first, I will soon let him go to hell with you, none of you can escape." The killer leader looked at the crazy Norman Osborn, and felt chills all over his body. Was there something wrong with their investigation or something happened? Shouldn't he be an ordinary person? Okay, that's the end of the chat, you're not fun at all, I'm going to find something more fun, he. Norman Osborn helped his mask and raised the short blade in his right hand. Jin will not let you go. The killer leader gritted his teeth and whispered to the person in front of him. Norman Osborn also laughed strangely when he heard this and said, "No. The Green Goblin probably won't let Kingpin go, ha 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 ha." After finishing speaking, he raised his right hand and slashed across the neck of the person in front of him with the short blade. Blood gushed out immediately, staining his breastplate black and red. Hey, ha 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 ha. Accompanied by wild and weird laughter, the Green Goblin flew past New York on an aircraft. Now he wants to find Kingpin to settle accounts. He is not the Norman Osborn who was helpless in the face of threats. He has been reborn as the Green Goblin. Yesterday's evil spirit's betrayal caught him by surprise. Being engulfed by the flames and on the verge of death, he had no choice but to grab a chance and climb into the container that had transformed the evil spirit. In the past, he didn't dare to try it himself because he was afraid of accidents. In the end, he created the enemy of evil spirits for himself, and almost killed him. Now, in order to survive, Norman Osborn can only put everything out of his mind and use the newly developed strengthening agent to save his precarious life. Judging from the current results, he was undoubtedly successful. The potion not only saved his life, but also allowed him to obtain a powerful physical fitness that he had never had before, but the price of this strength was that his spirit became a little strange, as if he was a little split. But now Norman Osborn is not aware of his abnormality at all, instead he accepts such changes with pleasure. He doesn't want to be a cowardly and incompetent Norman Osborn who only studies, he wants to be extremely powerful and unfettered Green Goblin. In order to take revenge on Kingpin and the Goblin, he used the Osborn Group's most advanced technology to build himself this armor and aircraft, and transformed into the Green Goblin. Compared with the Goblin's equipment, his is undoubtedly more powerful and comprehensive. Just when the Green Goblin was thinking about how to take care of Jin Bin, a black spider thread suddenly shot from a distance, stuck to the bottom of his aircraft, and pulled him down violently. The Green Goblin was unprepared for such a situation, but he quickly adjusted, and immediately used the flames sprayed from under the aircraft to burn off the spider silk. At the moment when he was handling the spider silk, Chen Linan, who was wearing a hood, also quickly used the spider silk to jump into the air and kick down the green goblin who had just burned the spider silk. The green goblin rolled and fell to the top of the building below, and Chen Linan also landed lightly on the top of the building. Today, Chen Linan went for a stroll after dinner, to see if there were any snacks suitable for Venom, but he didn't expect to run into an old opponent that he hadn't been able to solve before by such a coincidence. Why, changing your equipment is the reason for your unscrupulous flying. The jewelry exhibition let you run away last time, and this time you will never be let off. Chen Linan looked at the evil ghost, who had changed his appearance in front of him and said coldly. The green goblin quickly realized when he heard the words. It turned out that the killer Venom who had just gained fame in front of him regarded himself as that disgusting and dirty evil spirit. He waved his hand to let the aircraft return to him, and then said to Chen Linan with a weird smile, "Hey. I'm not that trash, I'm the Green Goblin. Hey. Although I really want to have fun with you, but I am busy killing other people now. Next time I will come to you, cut off your head and keep it." Speaking of this, the Green Goblin continued excitedly, "I've seen reports about you, and I like your style very much. I can't wait just thinking about it, hey. Listening to the weird man in front of him who called himself the Green Goblin, Chen Linan felt like he was hallucinating. He actually admitted so generously that he wanted to kill other people. It's not incomprehensible for Chen Linan just like this. After all, appearing in New York City with such an outfit is more or less mentally abnormal. The key is that he actually wanted to keep his own head. When he heard the words of the Green Goblin, the venom in Chen Linan's body was not happy. Where did the little fool come from? He always treats other people's heads as snacks. I have never seen such a rampant person who said they wanted to hide their heads as soon as they came up. This guy who looks like a ghost is somewhat insane. Chen Linan complained to Venom in his heart. Although the evil spirit who was almost killed by him before also looked crazy and a little nervous, Chen Linan could clearly feel the traces of camouflage. This Green Goblin is a bit unusual today, because he feels that the other party may be really mentally disturbed. Venom gritted his teeth indignantly and said, "I'm going to take his head off and check it for him to see if his brain is as green as it is." Although Chen Linan communicated with the Venom, his movements did not stop, and he immediately shot out another web of spider silk to cover the Green Goblin. Seeing this, the Green Goblin turned over and jumped onto the flying machine, dexterously avoiding the enveloping net. When he jumped onto the aircraft, Chen Linan also used his legs to jump directly from the roof to the Green Goblin's aircraft. Hey, how stupid, how could I let you step on my aircraft? The Green Goblin taunted Chen Linan while changing directions in the air, and Chen Linan broke through the air. But at the same time that the Green Goblin was avoiding Chen Linan in midair suddenly stretched out a few tentacles from behind, directly wrapped around the Green Goblin's body, and pulled himself onto the aircraft in an instant. After landing on the aircraft, he bent his fingers into claws, and began to output his latest silky combo against the Green Goblin. I saw the aircraft flying at high speed over New York, and at the same time, Chen Linan's claws were constantly catching sparks on the Green Goblin's armor, leaving traces. What is the material of his claws? How could they be so sharp? The Green Goblin was secretly surprised while parrying Chen Linan's attack. His armor was made of a special material that was both lightweight and highly defensive. Will be traced so easily. Chen Linan was also thinking to himself at this moment, this armor looks ordinary and a bit ugly, how can it have such a strong defensive power? While fighting the Green Goblin, he became very interested in the armor on the opponent's body, thinking that he could study the armor carefully after finishing the man. Although the Green Goblin's physical fitness has been greatly improved, he was just an ordinary person before, and his fighting skills were not as good as Chen Linan's, so he was also struggling very hard at the moment. The defense of the armor was being gradually broken, and the tentacles of the venom in front of him firmly fixed the opponent on the aircraft, making it impossible for him to throw off the opponent through various flights. The most important thing is that the two of them are so close, his most powerful pumpkin bomb can't be used at all, and the guns on the aircraft have never been designed to shoot in their direction. Under such an embarrassing situation, the frequency of the Green Goblin's eerie laughter also gradually decreased, which made the Venom can't help shouting in Chen Linan's body triumphantly. Ugly green monster. You still want to covet our heads, see how I will tear you apart. Venom screamed. Puff. A few bloodstains protruded from the Green Goblin's chest, and his solid breastplate was finally broken. The situation is not good. The defense was broken, and the Green Goblin was extremely anxious. He had completely lost the madness at the beginning, and realized how difficult the opponent in front of him was. Your turtle shell is not that hard, Chen Linan said coldly, and then transformed his right hand into a sharp awl, preparing to penetrate the Green Goblin's heart with one blow. The armor's defense had been broken, and he had nothing left to fight with. Stop this attack. When the Green Goblin saw the stabbing attack, he hurriedly grabbed Chen Linen's wrist to prevent further damage. Then, at the moment when Chen Linen's right hand was temporarily grabbed, his mask's mouth suddenly opened, and then a gust of nerve drug gushed out, straight to Chen Linen's face. Chen Linan, who had his right wrist grabbed, was going to continue piercing the Green Goblin with his left hand, but he didn't expect such a sinister trick to strike, and he couldn't dodge for a while and was sprayed in the face. Chen Linan, who was sprayed by the drug, was in a daze. He was swaying on the rapidly flying aircraft. If the tentacles on his body were not still holding the aircraft tightly, he might have fallen. Hey, since you like this aircraft so much, I'll give it to you for free. The Green Goblin made a decisive decision after seeing the sneak attack, jumped off the speeding aircraft, rolled and landed on the ground. On a building in the distance. The moment he left the aircraft, he hastily pressed the self-destruction button on his wrist, causing the entire aircraft to heat up and expand rapidly, and then gorgeous flames rose with a bang. After Chen Linan was successfully attacked, he fell into a chaotic state of consciousness. Although the Venom and his growing physical fitness were trying their best to dispel the nerve drug, the explosion happened so fast that the Venom had not had time to withdraw its tentacles and leave the aircraft. Boom! Following the heat wave of the explosion, Chen Linen's body directly hit the roof of the building not far away, and even the guardrail beside the building was shattered and deformed. The pain made the groggy Chen Linan wake up a little. He shook his head and leaned against the wall of the elevator shaft, then took a deep breath and let his body and Venom quickly dissolve the nerve drugs. A long breath and the clicking sound of bone healing sounded at the same time. After more than 10 seconds, Chen Linan opened his eyes again. MD, I'm a bit careless. Chen Linan stood up, reflecting on the gains and losses of this battle in his heart, while continuing to search for the Green Goblin. I can't feel anyone peeping. He should have taken advantage of the time and ran away, Venom said to Chen Linan while feeling it. The flames of the explosion somewhat suppressed my strength, otherwise I could neutralize the poison faster. He didn't take advantage of the moment when I lost my mind to continue attacking me. It seems that he is not crazy enough to lose his mind. Chen Linan continued to fly with the spider silk, and said softly to the Venom. Venom smiled disdainfully after hearing the words. Cut, if he still dares to continue to attack, I will definitely bite off his head when he approaches. Forget it, it's useless to say this now, let's let that guy run away. Chen Linan said a little depressed. Venom also continued after hearing the words. Don't worry, I will definitely deal with him next time I meet him. In the laboratory on the top floor of the Osborn building, everything here has been restored to its original state, as if there was no explosion, only the indelible black marks in the corner indicate what happened here before. Norman Osborn has already taken off his mask and armor at this moment, and is lying on a special instrument like a single bed. The mechanical hand next to the instrument was quickly helping him to stitch up the scars on his chest. Those scars were so deep that the bones wrapped in pink flesh could almost be seen. Norman Osborn stared at the ceiling with a gloomy face, and the scene of the battle with Chen Linan just now flashed through his mind. Thinking of the sharp claws and the sharp awl that almost pierced his chest in the end, he felt palpitations. His hands can suddenly turn into sharp cones. Thinking of Chen Linen's hands that suddenly changed shape, Norman Osborn felt incomprehensible for a while. Could it be nanotechnology? He actually realized such a cutting-edge technology. Norman Osborn suddenly felt that the opponent named Venom just now was a little mysterious. Just as his thoughts were racing, the mechanical arm had completely stitched up his wound. Norman Osborn immediately stood up and wrapped himself with a bandage with the help of the mechanical arm. The strengthening potion has doubled his physical fitness, including his body's recovery ability, so the injuries that are enough for ordinary people to lie in the hospital for a long time are not particularly serious for him now. His wound has been sutured, and as long as he does not engage in excessive strenuous exercise during this period, the wound will recover soon with the help of medicine. But even so, his plan to retaliate against Jin Bing would need to be delayed for a period of time according to normal analysis. Should I postpone it? Norman Osborn thought to himself while putting on his clothes. No, Jin must solve it as soon as possible. Suddenly his face became distorted, and even his voice became a little shrill. He wants to get rid of me. So I have to get rid of him as soon as possible. Get rid of him. Norman Osborn clenched his fists tightly and shouted in a high-pitched voice. Jin Bin's threat made him have to do it as soon as possible. Get rid of him. Get rid of him. Norman muttered to himself, pacing back and forth in the laboratory. I must upgrade my weapon. I want to become more comprehensive. More powerful. There's Venom. Venom. Norman Osborn cursed while clenching his fists tightly. His expression was distorted and crazy, but there was a trace of fear in his eyes. I saw that some readers have doubts about the place of nerve drugs, and think that there is venom in it. How can you still be recruited? But in fact, even if there is venom, you have to breathe, and the venom will not provide you with oxygen, or it can directly filter the poisonous gas. Not so buggy. On the morning of the second day after the Green Goblin appeared, Jin Bin was sitting in his bulletproof car, watching the report sent to him by Alistair on the computer in his hand. Apart from the daily affairs, what made him frown the most was the news that the killer team he sent had no feedback at all. Such an abnormal situation made him subconsciously feel that something was wrong, and there was no news, just like he suppressed the robbery at the convenience store and the death of the rhino before without any reports. Could it be that Norman Osborn noticed something? Jin Bin closed the computer in his hand, and thought with a serious face, when did he have such a great energy? Jin thought about Norman Osborn's situation, then shook his head and thought about other candidates. In his opinion, this matter cannot be done by Norman Osborn. Norman Osborn is just an ordinary person, at most he can add a prefix of scientist and entrepreneur. He has absolutely no way to make so many people disappear. While Jin Bing was frowning and thinking about what was going on, a strange and presumptuous laugh suddenly came from outside his car. He. Ha 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 ha. This evil spirit dares to come to make trouble. Jin Bin instantly determined that the person who came was the evil spirit who had assassinated him just now based on the laughter. You are given a chance to live, and if you don't grasp it, go to hell. Jin Bin said in a vicious and deep voice, while signaling to his bodyguards, telling them to quickly start preparing according to the means to deal with evil spirits. Do you want to be a shrinking turtle? Jin Bin, the Green Goblin, who had already flown to the front of the convoy, smiled strangely while avoiding the shooting of the bodyguards below, while mocking Jin Bin who was sitting in a special bulletproof car. While he was circling and flying, several black muzzles protruded from the bottom of the aircraft under his feet. They were facing in different directions, tracking and locking the enemy while shooting continuously, causing the bodyguards to fall to the ground like wheat. Hey, ha 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 ha, do you like the gift I gave you? There are even better ones here. The Green Goblin took out a few yellow pumpkin bombs while talking, and then threw them below the bodyguards gathered together. A place with fierce firepower. He also gave special care to Jin Bing's bulletproof car, and 3 bombs were dropped beside the bulletproof car. Boom, 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 boom. As the explosions continued to sound, fiery red, gorgeous flowers bloomed on the ground. Their high temperature and vibration made the people nearby either burned to charcoal or blown to pieces. Jin Bing's bulletproof car also began to be damaged under the influence of the violent explosion. Not only the tires were directly destroyed, but even the windows and body began to be damaged. With a livid face, he pinched the phone in his hand, waiting for his reinforcements to appear. He had just notified Alistair to let the other party control the robots and other lethal machines that could be used to deal with this terrifying weirdo that suddenly appeared. Through the uncracked car window just now, Jin Bing also saw that the strange monster attacking him outside was a little different from the previous evil spirits. Although they were both stepping on aircraft, they were obviously not the same person no matter in terms of color, equipment, or style. Ha 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 ha, my dear Jin Bin, aren't you very domineering? Why don't you dare to come out while hiding in the car? The Green Goblin continued to taunt and shrink back in the car while slaughtering the remaining bodyguards outside. Jin Bing. After he finished speaking, he continued to speak in a strange tone, and then sang in his sharp and ugly voice, ha 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 ha. I am the king of the underworld, Jin Bin. I have a hard turtle shell. As long as I hide in my shell, no one can hurt me. This mocking singing made Jin, who was sitting in the car, gnash his teeth angrily. He wished he could catch that green monster flying in the sky and crush it, but this was only a thought, and it couldn't be realized. In fact, under Jin Bing's huge size, there is a very powerful power far beyond that of ordinary people. Many opponents have died under his huge fists. But despite this, he can only hide in the car to suppress his anger. After all, the opponents outside are not ordinary people. No matter how powerful he is, he will definitely not be able to stop the explosion of bombs and the shooting of bullets. Boom, 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 boom. The sound of explosions continued. Jin Bing's bodyguards were almost wiped out, and the bulletproof car he relied on was also damaged a lot, and he could no longer resist such an attack for a long time. Jin Bin originally wanted to urge Alistair to come as soon as possible, but his phone had been smashed into pieces under the extreme anger just now, and there was no way to make further contact. He couldn't remember the last time he had such close contact with death. After all, he had never received threats from others since he became Jin Bin. Ha 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 ha, your tortoise shell is broken, just say goodbye like this, remember my name, the person who sent you to hell is the Green Goblin. The Green Goblin smiled strangely at Jin and said, pulled out a yellow pumpkin bomb. According to the current level of damage to Jin Bin's armored vehicle, he only needs another improved pumpkin bomb to finish him off. By the way, Norman Osborn greets you. Ha 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 ha, he he he. The Green Goblin threw a pumpkin bomb while talking. Jin in the car also saw this scene through the damaged gap, and the unwillingness and despair that hadn't been seen for some time resurfaced on his face. He never expected that he would actually fall into the hands of that Norman Osborn. The Green Goblin should be the latest killer hired by Norman Osborn. Although it is very similar to the evil spirit, it is far more violent, cruel and crazy than the evil spirit. The sound of the pumpkin bomb became more and more urgent. Just as it was about to explode, a white spider thread shot from a distance, directly stuck the pumpkin bomb and threw it into the sky, causing it to explode in the air. Get ready to atone for the dead. You stupid Halloween clown. Spider-Man suddenly fell from the sky and jumped onto the roof of a defunct car. He looked at the Green Goblin flying in the air, as well as the corpses and blood on the ground, and said in a cold and angry voice, I won't let you escape this time. Seeing that Spider-Man came out to interfere with his own good affairs, the Green Goblin suddenly became a little annoyed and shouted, why do these meddling guys come to disrupt the situation every time? While avoiding the spider webs shot by Spider-Man, he yelled and threw a pumpkin bomb, since you like meddling in your own business so much, you can die together. Wall crawler. Facing the incoming pumpkin bomb, Peter's spider sensor immediately started to remind him. At the same time, he also jumped off the spot and let himself jump on the roof of another scrapped car. Just when he was standing firmly on his feet, the Green Goblin was already stepping on the aircraft and pouring bullets at him. In desperation, Peter continued to roll and dodge flexibly. His Spider-Man suit was not bulletproof. There are also strong threats. Peter rolled over while thinking about countermeasures. After a while, he who was dodging suddenly shot out several spider threads, and one of them shot directly at the face of the Green Goblin who couldn't dodge, covering his face and blocking his sight. Such a situation caused the Green Goblin to temporarily lose his sight for a few seconds. Taking this opportunity, Peter jumped up and landed on the Green Goblin's aircraft, ready to fight him personally. After all, the advantage of the enemy is that he can fly the aircraft, which is more flexible and difficult to control. Now he directly faces the opponent to make up for this part of the gap, as long as he uses strength and skills to suppress the opponent. At the same time Peter jumped on the aircraft, the Green Goblin also removed the spider silk sticking to his face. Seeing the sudden appearance of Spider-Man, instead of being panicked or surprised, he began to laugh wildly, hey hey hey. You really or I will also use this trick, but now it is no longer effective. When Peter heard the Green Goblin's words, he felt a little bad. At the same time, his spider sensor also began to feel, but before he subconsciously started to dodge, a strong current passed through the aircraft under his feet. The sudden electric shock twitched the unsuspecting Peter, and the Green Goblin also took advantage of the stunned state that the electric shock left him in. He hit Peter's head hard by pinching his neck. Peter, who was already distracted by the electric shock, was even more dizzy under the Green Goblin's powerful and heavy fist attacks. He instinctively raised his hands to defend, but unfortunately, the weak block could not withstand the Green Goblin's fists. Hey hey hey, since you like riding my flying machine so much, then I will let you experience the fun that you can only experience once in a lifetime, as a reward for you, ha 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 ha. The Green Goblin smiled and grabbed Peter's neck, lifted him up from the aircraft. Farewell, you hateful wall crawler, ha 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 ha. After speaking, the Green Goblin threw Peter, who was carrying it, directly from the height he had just ascended to, causing him to fall into a pulp. After he was done, he didn't stay any longer, but flew directly to the vehicle where Jin Bin was, wanting to continue the sanctions and trial that had just been interrupted by Spider-Man. Ha 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 ha, let's continue the game just now. The Green Goblin threw a pumpkin bomb under Jin Bin's bulletproof car while talking. Boom. The bulletproof vehicle had been exploded and shattered under the attack of this bomb, and turned into a pile of broken copper and iron that scattered with a bang. The Green Goblin also showed a satisfied smile when he saw the bulletproof car that exploded, but his smile froze within a few seconds, because he didn't see the huge body that should have died inside. This situation only shows one thing, that is, Jin took advantage of the moment when Spider-Man was entangled with him and slipped away. Ah! The Green Goblin was circling in the air to search for Jin Bin's voice while roaring shrilly, but the result disappointed him because he could no longer see Jin Bin's figure at all, but some police cars were speeding towards him from a distance. While the Green Goblin was hovering in the air, screaming and cursing to vent his anger, Peter, whose head mask was somewhat smashed, was lying on the bottom of the aircraft and moving slowly. The next second, Peter suddenly attacked from behind the Green Goblin and kicked him off the aircraft. The Green Goblin, who was distracted by his anger, fell from the air and directly dented the top of a scrapped vehicle. Although his armor helped him bear part of the damage, after all, he fell from such a high place off the ground, so for a while he also screamed in pain. Coupled with the fact that the wound on his chest hadn't healed yet, such a fall directly caused the unhealed wound on the Green Goblin's chest to burst open again. Ah, wall crawler, you broke me. Before the Green Goblin could finish swearing, Peter also landed on the roof of the scrapped car with a bang, and then used a fist interrupted his growl. You criminal! Peter beat the Green Goblin with red eyes, unable to hide his anger, and roared, you are not a devil. Who are you? Why do you want to kill so many people? Why? Ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. The Green Goblin laughed wantonly when he heard Peter's words, of course I'm not that trashy fool. I'm the Green Goblin, ha 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 ha. Bang. Just as the Green Goblin smiled and spoke, the angry Peter punched him in the face again. Oh, poor Spider-Man, if you had come earlier, I might not have killed them all. Looking at the angry Peter, the Green Goblin couldn't help stimulating his heart with more sharp and sarcastic words. Asshole. Although the Green Goblin's words were very clumsy, the damage to Peter at this moment was indeed extremely powerful. He clenched his fists, preparing to give this criminal another hard blow. Ha 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 ha. Since I am so screwed, then why don't you just kill me? Ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. Poor Spider-Man, cowardly Spider-Man, hey 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 hey. The Green Goblin continued to stab Peter in the heart. Seeing the other party's anger and self-blame obviously made him very happy. Just as Peter's fist hit the Green Goblin's face, a sudden strong spider sense made him jump up instantly, and then rolled away from the roof of the car. The moment he jumped up, the Green Goblin's aircraft flew past the position where he was just now. If it wasn't for his quick reaction, the sharp front end of the aircraft alone would be enough to pierce him. While Peter was dodging the sneak attack, the Green Goblin jumped on the flying machine again while he was away. He looked at Peter standing on the ground, and smiled strangely while hovering in the air, hey hey hey. Although I failed to achieve my goal this time, you made me find a lot of fun. Now I will give you another chance to save those innocent people, don't let yourself down again. Ha 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 ha. After the Green Goblin finished speaking, he threw a series of pumpkin bombs at the police car and the police who had just parked next to him, then continued to laugh strangely while stepping on the aircraft and left here, leaving only a series of sharp laughter echoing in the eyes. Peter's ears kept widening. Hey 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 hey, ha 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 ha. Peter couldn't keep chasing the goblin, who was speeding away, because all he had eyes for now were the ticking pumpkin bombs. Get down, Peter yelled at the policeman, and then ran over there while shooting balls of spider silk with the spider silk launcher on his wrist. These spider silk balls shot at the pumpkin bombs accurately, knocking them all into the air, ensuring that their explosion would not hurt the police on the ground. But when there was the last pumpkin bomb left, Peter's spider silk launcher suddenly released a tiny bit of electric light, and then smoked and couldn't continue to launch. It's this time. Seeing the strange shape of the launcher in his hand, Peter also cursed in his heart. The electric shock just now must have short-circuited my spider silk launcher. It was almost there. There was only the last pumpkin bomb left, and Peter had already made a decision in an instant. Accompanied by the more and more rapid beats, he ran with all his strength, and finally caught the pumpkin bomb with his hand at the last one. Boom! The sound of an explosion suddenly sounded, and almost all the pumpkin bombs exploded in midair away from the ground without causing any damage. Only the one that Peter slapped with his hand was not too far away when it finally detonated because it was too late. The pumpkin bomb inflated suddenly, and the flames from the explosion climbed onto Peter's body. The right half of his upper body was bloody, and the high temperature even scorched his skin. Ah! The severe pain made Peter howl in a low voice unbearably, and he fell to his knees weakly, only feeling that he could no longer hear any sound in his ears, only piercing tinnitus. The right side of his body was burning, and the pain was unbearable. In addition, his head was also groggy, and he felt a little nauseous. Peter panted hard. Cold sweat soaked through the damaged mask and dripped to the ground, and the dust from the explosion also flew and stuck to his wound and soaked battle suit. Don't move. After a few minutes, the policemen who came to their senses also saw Spider-Man kneeling on the ground. They immediately drew out their pistols and raised them to warn Peter, who was panting constantly. During these few minutes, Peter also breathed a sigh of relief. Although the pain and dizziness were still the same, he managed to stand up slowly. As he stood up, the muzzle of the policeman moved slowly. Spider-Man, you are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent, but every word you say will become evidence in court. Just as the policeman continued to speak and warn, Peter raised his left hand tremblingly and pressed his spider web launcher. After pressing it a few times without any response, a white spider silk finally shot out from it and stuck to the top of a building not far away. Peter ignored the police's warning, but took a few steps back to stretch the elasticity of the spider silk to a certain extent, and then jumped up slightly, letting the spider silk fly straight towards the roof of the building not far away. Bang! With a gunshot, a bullet flew out. Although it didn't hit Peter directly, it still tore a hole in his thigh. Because of this, Peter almost couldn't catch the spider silk, but luckily he wrapped the spider silk around his wrist twice for safety, which avoided accidents. Seeing the bullets fired suddenly and the gunshot next to his ear, the leading policeman also changed his expression, and then directly yelled at the young policeman beside him, "Who told you to shoot?" "I didn't do it on purpose, I'm a little nervous." The young policeman also turned pale with fright at the roar of his boss. In fact, he didn't go off fire, he just said this to appease the anger of his boss. He actually aimed at the shot, but the flying Spider-Man happened to dodge him. He wanted to use the arrest of Spider-Man as a stepping stone for himself to climb up. Go back and give me a detailed report, explaining why a well-trained police officer went off the rails. If you don't understand clearly, you can go back and study again. The leading policeman was still very angry, and said to the young policeman with a cold face. Osborn Building. Norman Osborn once again lay on the special healing device, and the mechanical arm next to him was still suturing his wound again like yesterday. Norman Osborn stared at the ceiling with a gloomy face, chanting a few names over and over in his mouth: Ghost, Venom, Spider-Man, Kingpin. He suddenly roared, his eyes became more and more fierce. These guys are in the way. I must get rid of them. After the wound was stitched up, Norman Osborn also stood up and put on his clothes, and then took a few pills with water. These pills were used to treat internal injuries. Originally, he wanted to kill Jin Bin directly today, so he didn't wait for the wound on his chest to heal. but who knew that without the venom, Spider-Man came out to get in the way, and made him hurt even more. Thinking of this, Norman Osborn's eyes became gloomy again. At this moment, a video connection message popped up on the big screen of the laboratory computer, and Norman Osborn looked at the displayed name with a bit of astonishment on his face. After thinking for a few seconds, he still pressed the call button, only to see a huge figure in a suit appear on the screen. "What do you want from me, Fisk? You probably didn't want to catch up with me." Norman looked at the screen expressionlessly. Seeing that Norman Osborn's temperament was obviously different from the previous ones, Jin Bin narrowed his eyes slightly, then slightly raised the corners of his mouth and said softly, "My old friend, I want to cooperate with you on some projects. I wonder if you have any intentions. Think about the fact that we have done a lot of business together. Isn't it good for us now? We are businessmen, and there is nothing we cannot cooperate and discuss." Hearing Jin Bin's subdued words, Norman narrowed his eyes slightly, the restlessness and madness in his heart slowly faded away, and reason returned to his head. As night falls, the night in early autumn is already cool. On the top of a building, beside a statue of a bat monster lay a figure with half of its body covered in blood and flesh. If it weren't for his body still rising and falling with his weak breathing, this state would look no different from a corpse. Today's clouds covered the moon, and only the big screen of the opposite building provided the only light for this dim roof. Suddenly, a black figure wearing a hood jumped up from the side of the building and landed on the concrete fence at the top of the building. The light on the screen behind him seemed to be a black silhouette. "So he's here. I should have thought of it a long time ago." Chen Linan murmured softly, jumped off the fence and came to the top of the building, walking towards the lying figure over there. "After all, this idiot's old friend Bruce is here," Venom responded. After finishing speaking, it looked at Peter on the ground with some contempt and said, "It's a shame that that greenhead was hurt like this. Didn't we fail to get rid of him last time and let him run away? Why did he turn into a greenhead?" Chen Linan responded to Venom while spraying black spider silk on Peter's exposed skin. Venom snorted and said, "If that guy hadn't been playing tricks, we would have knocked his head off. Didn't that guy say he was a green goblin? That's why I called him the greenhead. Next time I see him, I'll have to open his head to see if it's right." "You're pretty quick at picking up nicknames," Chen Linan complained after hearing this. At this time, he had already wrapped the wounds on Peter's body with spider silk. After all, spider silk was antibacterial and breathable, and could act like gauze. Then he put Peter in a temporary hammock-like cobweb, and then carried Peter around the buildings. Poor Spider-Man Peter Parker, who suffered such serious injuries but could only lie on the top of a cold building. If Chen Linan hadn't found him in time, there would probably be no Spider-Man in the world after another night. The battle and tragedy this morning have been urgently reported on TV media and newspapers in the fastest possible time. The Green Goblin's vicious, weird and brutal style has already become famous in New York and even the beautiful country. After all, it was piled up with dozens of human lives. Chen Linan was also very worried about Peter after seeing the news, because he also knew that Spider-Man's equipment was ordinary except for the spider web launcher. If he was hit by the Green Goblin's pumpkin bomb at close range, the injury would definitely not be minor. He has witnessed the power of the pumpkin bomb. To be honest, Spider-Man's physical fitness is relatively good. If it were an ordinary person, he would probably be in the box now. For safety and privacy, Chen Linan could only take Peter back to his home. However, in order to prevent his identity and other information from being leaked, Chen Linan wrapped Peter's eyes with spider silk, making him temporarily blind. Chen Linan placed Peter on the floor of the guest room, then took off the spider silk he had just wrapped and applied medicine. "Oh, really? I didn't expect that the person I was taking care of for the first time in 2 lives would be a man." Chen Linan thought helplessly in his heart while disinfecting Peter's injuries. "By the way, can you help his body heal like you heal mine?" Chen Linan asked Venom as if he remembered something while taking the medicine. Venom rubbed his chin and said, I'm not too sure about this. After all, your body is quite special. I used to be able to get into his body to help him recover. How about giving it a try?" Chen Linan looked at the Venom and stopped moving his hands. If the Venom can heal others, then he can save some trouble. Otherwise, considering the degree of Peter's injury, even including his superhuman physique, it will take a long time to recover. Then try. The venom turned into a black liquid while talking, one end on Chen Linen's body, and the other end got into Peter's body. After a while, something miraculous happened. Chen Linan heard the broken bones in Peter's body being slowly put back together. After a while, the venom came out of Peter's body, all retracted into Chen Linen's body, and then condensed into a black head on his shoulder a moment later. Venom stretched out his long scarlet tongue, drooping his pale eyes, and said weakly, "It's too much effort. I just used up almost all of my energy, but I can only heal his bones and part of his internal organs." Sure enough, the situation changed after we were united. It should be related to your mental power. Venom took a piece of chocolate from the table and analyzed it while biting it. It should be your mental control over yourself. The stronger I am, the more freedom I have. Chen Linan also groped his chin and thought after hearing this. It seems that there is another benefit to grasping his mental power as soon as possible. How about this? You can eat your chocolate casually today to replenish energy. We need to heal him as soon as possible. Chen Linan looked at the venom and said. Unexpectedly, Venom was not very happy when he heard the words. He just curled his lips and said, "Even if I eat chocolate, I will consume all the energy to heal this idiot on the ground. I'm like a porter. I didn't get any benefits at all. No, I'm not as good as a porter. Porters still have wages." Hearing Venom's complaint, Chen Linan also fell silent. After a moment, he said to Venom again, "Tell me, is there a possibility? I don't know exactly how much energy you need, so you can completely consume it at the scheduled time. Basically, keep some more energy for yourself." Venom was also stunned when he heard this. Yes, why didn't he expect it? Stop talking, it's already too late. Don't you often say that you are a special life form, how much higher than human beings, and how can you react so slowly? Chen Linan interrupted the Venom very mercilessly, and by the way, and mocked it. When Venom heard this, his head suddenly became angry a few times. What are you talking about? This is obviously because humans are too cunning. Seeing the Venom inflating like a balloon, Chen Linan also winked at the Venom and said with a smile, "Hey, it's just a joke, look at why you are still anxious. Don't worry, I will let you eat as much chocolate as you want after your treatment is over." Venom is also a little angry at this time, but he feels that he has to seize the opportunity to get full of chocolate again, so he can only hold his breath with his head wide. HMPH. Humans are so cunning, Venom muttered dissatisfiedly, and then entered Peter's body with full energy, and began to help him repair the remaining damage. After a long time, Venom repeated the previous operation again and again. When the sky outside lit up, the Venom came out of Peter's body again panting, and then plunged into the pile of chocolate beside him to replenish his energy. Seeing that the injuries on Peter's body had basically healed, Chen Linan also nodded and sighed. It seems that the treatment is finally over, and I'm a little tired from sitting. At this moment, Peter could no longer tell that he had suffered such a serious injury yesterday. Only the exposed skin that was already bloody and bloody had grown new ones, and it was still slightly red at the moment. There was a lot of new skin on the ground that had been replaced by new growth. Chen Linan looked at these and suddenly thought deeply about whether he should clean them with a broom or a test tube. The next morning, in Chen Linen's guest room, the sunlight outside the window slowly climbed up the windowsill, then slipped into the room, and landed on Peter's naked upper body. The sunlight heated up his well-proportioned muscles, and Peter, who had basically recovered, woke up slowly from his coma. Peter opened his glued eyes, but he still saw the darkness, which made Peter, who had just woken up and was still a little dazed, a little confused. "I can't see anymore. Did the explosion hurt my eyes?" Peter muttered to himself, his tone gradually getting lonely and sad. "Your eyes are fine, but I didn't want you to see something, so I covered them first." Chen Linen's voice suddenly came from the door. When Peter heard the sound, his head immediately turned in the direction of Chen Linan and said, "Venom. You saved me. What's my condition now? I remember that I seemed to be seriously injured." As Chen Linan walked into the room and sat on a chair nearby, he explained to Peter, "Your injury is indeed serious, so I brought you back yesterday to heal you. Covering your eyes is a last resort. I hope you can understand, because there are some secrets I don't want others to know." Hearing this, Peter subconsciously touched his face, and his mask was gone. Seeing his actions, Chen Linan also continued, "You also had a wound on your face, so I took it away. As for your identity, you can rest assured that I will keep it confidential. You may not believe it, but I have known your true identity before." Recovery of Yang, uncomfortable, everyone also pay attention to the body. Hearing Chen Linen's words, Peter also murmured with some confusion, "I remember that my confidentiality work was pretty good. There are always some details that you can't control." Chen Linan continued, "You don't have to be afraid, your identity is of no use to me. Although we have different styles of handling things, we can also be regarded as the same, camp people." Peter also became silent when he heard the words, but he soon figured it out, and speaking of it, Venom was also his savior. If, as Venom said, he had known his identity before, then the fact that nothing abnormal happened for such a long time was enough to prove that his identity had no effect on the other party. You're right. Thinking of this, the panic and tension in Peter's heart that his secret had been exposed immediately dissipated. After finishing speaking, he said sincerely in the direction of Chen Linen's voice, "Thank you for saving me. I wanted to go to the hospital by myself, but I couldn't bear it anymore, and finally fell down in a daze." "Where?" "On the top of a building." Chen Linan took over his words and said, "That's where your old friend is squatting." When Bruce heard Chen Linen's words, he also remembered something. The dizziness, severe pain, and nausea were probably something he would never forget in his lifetime, the bomb. Thinking of this, Peter suddenly came to his senses, and said in surprise, "That's right. Why don't I feel any pain anymore? Is it the effect of the anesthetic?" "No, it's not the effect of the anesthetic, you're already healed." Chen Linan threw him a piece of clothes that hadn't been tagged off, and said in a steady voice, as if it was just a trivial matter. Chen Linen's words made Peter stunned for a moment, and the clothes fell directly on his head in a daze. "Are you telling the truth? I'm already recovered. How long have I been unconscious?" "Half a year has passed, right? My God, what can I do? How should I explain it?" Peter said nervously while taking off the clothes on his head, and a series of questions showed his inner unrest. Chen Linan said helplessly, "Can't you feel it yourself? Could it be that your brain is broken? If that is the case, it will be troublesome. Brain is not my area of expertise. As for how long you have been in a coma, let me see." Chen Linen looked at the clock next to him, then calculated the time and said, "It has been a little over 11 hours since I found you." "How is this possible?" Peter didn't care about putting on his clothes at this time, and kept touching and inspecting himself with his hands, still indulging in unbelievable surprises. "This idiot really has never seen the world. This is just a small part of my ability." Seeing Peter's astonished and unbelievable look, Venom also subconsciously boasted to Chen Linan, he completely forgot that it was as tired as a dead dog just now. Listening to the smirk of the Venom, Chen Linan also looked at Peter, who was in ecstasy because he was sure that he had really recovered, and said softly, "Give you half an hour to get dressed, and then I will take you out of here. After that, what do you want to do? Go wherever you like." "Okay," Peter responded, then he picked up the clothes next to him and quickly started to put them on himself. When he lifted his pants, he paused, and then said to Chen Linan very sincerely, "Although I don't know how you managed to make me recover so quickly, this is your secret, but I want to be sure. It won't be easy either. So thank you. Venom, you saved my life, really, thank you. I will always remember your help." Peter put on his pants, opened his hands slightly and wanted to hug Chen Linan, but after a pause he bowed deeply instead and expressed his sincere gratitude. He couldn't imagine how poor Aunt May would continue to live alone if he really died. Hearing this, Chen Linan also smiled and waved his hand and said, "It is a good quality to try to help others within your ability. This is what someone once told me. And maybe there will be an opportunity for you to help me in the future. I will do my best." Peter also nodded solemnly to Chen Linan upon hearing this. Although his eyes were still wrapped in spider webs, he could still probably sense which direction Chen Linan was standing in. After all the previous events, Peter had already changed his impression of Venom, knowing that he was not a perverted murderer who only knew how to kill. Coupled with the life-saving grace this time, Peter has completely let go of his prejudice against Venom, and it can even be said that he regards him as a friend of Spider-Man. He must have experienced some kind of suffering before, so he will do anything to criminals, just like what happened to Uncle Ben. Peter thought to himself, and walked slowly out with Chen Linan. He was like this for a while, but then he found a path that suited him better. After opening the door, the warm sun shone on them. Although Peter's eyes were still dark, he could feel the coolness from the morning breeze and the warmth of the sun on his body. But before Peter could feel more, Chen Linan wrapped him up with spider silk, held him in his hand just like when he came back yesterday, and then flew him between the buildings again. Although Peter's injuries had all recovered, Chen Linan still didn't like holding a big man flying around in his arms. It was too strange, so he put it in his spiderweb pocket like yesterday. Soon Chen Linan and Peter arrived at the top of the building where the bat statue Bruce was. After he put Peter on the top of the building, he stood up and said softly, "Wait for a few seconds after I leave to uncover the spider threads on your eyes." Quote, "Okay, no problem." Peter climbed out of the cobweb and stood up while giving an okay gesture to Chen Linan to show that he understood. "Very good, then see you next time." Chen Linan nodded, then turned over and jumped off the roof. Peter also slowly took off the spider silk wrapped around his eyes a dozen seconds after hearing the movement. The strong sunlight made Peter's eyes, which had been blindfolded for a long time, a little uncomfortable. He squinted his eyes to adapt for a while, and then opened them completely. Looking at the sunny weather and feeling the slightly cold autumn wind, Peter also took a deep breath, with a slight smile on the corner of his mouth. "Venom is such a good man, he helped me again, what do you think, Bruce?" Peter touched the head of the bat statue and said softly with a smile. The next second, the smile on the corner of Peter's mouth froze suddenly, and he remembered that he seemed to have forgotten something. "Oops, Aunt May must have been so worried last night. I have to go home quickly, and I'd better think of another reason on the way." Peter, who realized what he had forgotten, instantly became anxious. He just wanted to use the spider silk to fly back home quickly, and then he raised his hand and suddenly remembered that his spider silk launcher had been scrapped, so he had no choice but to find the elevator. "I hope there is a public phone down there. I have to make a call first to report that I am safe." Peter looked anxiously at the number that kept dropping in the elevator, and suddenly thought of another way. But after touching his pockets, he realized that the clothes on his body were new clothes bought by Venom, and his old clothes were entangled with spider silk on a tall building. He has nothing to do without the spider silk and the battle suit. Go get it, or it will be over if someone takes a picture of it. Forget it, I can only run home quickly. Peter looked at the slowly opening elevator door, and rushed out like an arrow leaving the string. 20 minutes later, Peter, who was traveling at super speed, finally returned home. As he expected, Aunt May was walking around the living room very anxiously at this time, restless and restless. She still held the phone in her hand. From time to time she would raise her hand to look at the phone, and then continue walking. "Come and go. I'm back." Peter opened the door and said a little guilty and nervous. Hearing his voice, Aunt May immediately turned around and rushed over to hug him. "Oh, God, you are finally back. I am worried to death. Why didn't you come back last night? I couldn't get through the phone. I have reported to the police several times, but those policemen always pretend that it hasn't been 24 hours yet. What if something happens to you too?" Aunt May said with tears in her eyes and a little choked. She could no longer bear such a blow again. Seeing Aunt May's appearance, Peter hugged her very guiltily and said, "I'm sorry, Aunt May, I didn't mean not to answer your call and stay out at night. I ran into some trouble last night, but fortunately Spider-Man and Venom helped me solve the trouble. I didn't do anything and ran back as soon as it was over." After hearing Peter's explanation, Aunt May hurriedly checked his body and breathed a sigh of relief when no wounds were found. "God bless you are all right," Aunt May said with tears in her eyes as she walked towards the kitchen. "Poor child, you must be starving. I'll go get you some hot cocoa and something to eat. That Spider-Man and Venom don't look like the news either," she said as she walked into the kitchen. Hearing her murmur, Peter also smiled. Spider-Man had been depressed for a long time when his aunt misunderstood him. Fortunately, his injuries have fully recovered. If his aunt had seen him look like yesterday. Peter shook his head as he thought about it. That was something he never wanted to see in his life. Thinking of this, Peter became more grateful for Venom. New York is still brightly lit at night. There are many luxury cars parked at the entrance of a very high-end hotel. The receptionists at the entrance are coming and going. Some of the vehicles of future visitors are settled, and others are going upstairs to meet these people. Go up. A Bentley stopped in front of the hotel. The receptionist originally wanted to help open the back seat door, but there was no one in the back seat. At this time, the driver's door opened by itself, and Chen Linan got out of the car with the key. Unlike other guests, he still preferred to drive by himself. Today he was here to attend a gala, which was, to put it bluntly, a place where established businessmen and politicians in New York City made friends with each other. Now with the vigorous development of zero industry, Chen Linan naturally received the invitation. After handing the keys and invitations to the receptionist, he walked into the hotel lobby. The lobby was full of people wearing exquisite dresses. Although everyone did not know each other, they still nodded to each other after looking at each other. Aha, this is the legendary party of the upper class. It doesn't look like anything delicious, just a group of people standing and chatting. Venom complained to Chen Linan consciously. Chen Linan followed the guide to the elevator, and responded subconsciously, "This is just the lobby on the first floor, and I haven't reached the place yet. Don't worry, no matter how the party is, the food will definitely not be bad. At least the desserts are like this." Hearing this, Venom muttered with great anticipation, "Hey, I want to eat tiramisu, and I also want to eat chocolate. I don't know what the quality of the chocolate here is." Ding! As the crisp reminder sounded, the elevator door slowly opened, and after walking through the magnificent aisle, the bright and exquisite banquet hall came into view. There weren't many people inside, but there were quite a few. They were gathering in twos and threes and chatting with each other while holding wine glasses. Chen Linan looked around, and accurately found the dessert area that Venom had been thinking about all along. This sweet smell really makes me happy. Let's have some chocolate for an appetizer. Venom formed a mouth in Chen Linan's palm, and tasted the chocolate very secretly. Although eating like this is not as refreshing and fulfilling as usual, but after all there are so many people, it is better to keep a low profile. And it is also good to eat small bites, at least it can make the taste more mellow and long. That cupcake is delicious too, a clear female voice suddenly rang out, almost causing Venom to choke on himself, and Chen Linan also secretly clenched his palms, giving Venom a little time to shrink back. "Felicia, I really didn't expect to meet you here." Looking at Felicia holding a wine glass next to him, Chen Linan said with some surprise. While Felicia handed Chen Linan a glass of wine, she walked closer and said with a smile, "I didn't expect to meet you. I usually make the most of my time at boring parties like this." As Felicia approached, a fragrant aroma also entered Chen Linan's nose. Today is a formal party, so Felicia is also very delicately dressed. She was wearing a black velvet tube-top suspender dress, which perfectly showed her delicate collarbone and neck. The bottom of the dress was slit to her thighs, and her slender, white legs were revealed from time to time when she was walking, making her look extremely attractive. Coupled with exquisite makeup and bright red lips, Felicia walked slowly on stilettos like a noble queen, but her expression was very naughty and vivid, which made her cool and charming. Some more vivid colors. "You are also very beautiful today, like the most dazzling one in the diamond necklace." Chen Linan praised sincerely. After finishing speaking, he continued to laugh and said, "This time the compliment is not insignificant." Felicia also smiled and gave him a blank look when she heard the words, "HMPH, it's justified, a little bit better than last time." After finishing speaking, they both couldn't help laughing lightly. They chatted as they ate their desserts. "It's a boring banquet. If my mother didn't insist on me coming, I wouldn't come. Everyone here is well dressed and looks very serious and elegant. But in fact, many people are different from what they seem. It's really uncomfortable." As she spoke, Felicia's delicate eyebrows wrinkled, as if she thought of something. "Did anything unpleasant happen before?" Chen Linan also asked upon seeing this. Hearing his question, Felicia also raised her hand, then quietly leaned into Chen Linan's ear and whispered, "Last time was a banquet similar to today. I felt bored so I went to the windowsill to get some fresh air, and found out there's someone actually doing that in the next room. And I met them when I went back. They all have their own families, and they are still respectable people." Speaking of gossip, Felicia's eyes lit up. Although she didn't say who it was, following her eyes, Chen Linan probably understood the person. Seeing the bald man and the middle-aged woman each hugging their female and male companions, smiling and greeting each other politely, Chen Linan couldn't help but be speechless. This circle was quite chaotic. Venom was also very curious about this gossip, and even encouraged Chen Linan to ask for more details, but he stopped him forcefully. Just kidding, how can this kind of gossip be asked in detail? Isn't he shameless? Wouldn't Felicia be embarrassed? Just when the two of them were having a great time eating melons, someone next to them also spotted them, so they walked up with wine glasses. Oh, this beautiful lady must be Anastasia's daughter, long time no see. Just as Felicia was picking up an ice cream to moisten her throat, a thick voice suddenly came from the side. Chen Linan and Felicia also turned their heads after hearing this, and saw a large, bald man in a white suit looking at them with a smile. Oh, Mr. Fisk, long time no see. Felicia responded with a smile after seeing the man. After saying hello, Felicia also introduced Chen Linan and the others to each other. Leon, this is Mr. Fisk, my mother's good friend, and a famous entrepreneur and philanthropist. Mr. Fisk, this is my friend Leon Chen. After Felicia's introduction, Chen Linan and Wilson Fisk also smiled and shook hands, appearing both warm and polite, unfamiliar but polite. It turns out that you are the founder of Industry Zero. You are really young and promising. They say that the founder of Industry Zero is very mysterious and a young man, but I didn't expect him to be so young. Wilson Fisker admired him very much. Road. As the founder and person in charge of Zero Industry, Leon Chen's name is of course known to everyone, but because he usually keeps a low profile, fewer people have met him and know his identity. Chen Linan also smiled modestly when he heard this, and then replied, compared to Mr. Fisk's business empire, I am far behind. Through the compliments between the two, Felicia realized that the identity of Chen Linan who came here today was the founder of the famous industry some time ago. She also recognized Chen Linan's talent and ability very much, but she was extremely surprised that he made such a great achievement so quietly. Thinking of this, she looked at Chen Linan with a hint of confusion, a hint of shock, a hint of blame and annoyance. Through Felicia's eyes, Chen Linan also knew that her eyes meant that she didn't share this matter with her. When Chen Linan saw this, he could only touch her arm gently to express his apology. Although their little moves were secretive, they were all seen by Wilson Fisk. Wilson Fisker can only feel that Anastasia is lucky. You must know that he is also very eye-catching about the things of industry. If it weren't for the other party's military connections and background, he would have used some means too. After complimenting each other, friendly exchanges began. Many entrepreneurs also took the initiative to come forward and talk after seeing Wilson Fisk here. After a while, Chen Linan and the others gathered here. Many people did not participate in the topic after introducing each other, or stood aside to listen. They would find friends nearby to chat with each other, and then interrupt from time to time. Previous sentence. Just when everyone was chatting happily, another figure walked over from the side. Oh, my dear friend Wilson, what are you talking about? I wonder if I can join in. I saw Norman Osborn smiling and walking over to Wilson Fisk. Seeing Norman Osborn, Wilson Fisk introduced Chen Linan and Felicia to him with a smile. It's been a long time since I saw Miss Hardy. The last time I saw her was at her birthday dinner the year before last. Looking at Felicia, Norman Osborn also smiled with emotion. And Mr. Chen, the reputation of Lingdian industry has become more and more famous recently. I always knew that its founder was very young, but I didn't expect that it was not only young but also handsome. Faced with Norman Osborn's praise, Chen Linan responded humbly and familiarly, and then praised the Osborn group in a very high-level manner. After complimenting each other, everyone continued to chat. When talking about college life, Norman Osborn suddenly sighed and said with great emotion, "If only my son Henry could be as good as you." Henry is also very good. I remember he won the MVP in the last school basketball game. I haven't even been selected for the team. Although he is not very familiar with Henry Osborn, Chen Linan still relies on his excellent memory. I found some related incidents, and this time I didn't let Norman Osborn's words fall to the ground. Hearing Chen Linan's words, Norman Osborn was even more touched. Just when he wanted to continue talking, the noise not far away interrupted them. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.